Hello and welcome to the Introduction to CSS section. Let's understand what you learn after completing this section. Okay, you learn what is CSS and what is the full form and where it is being used and what is the purpose of CSS. Then you'll learn how to write CSS in HTML via inline, internal, external and linking. Then you'll learn how to write and debug CSS code. Then you'll also learn 12 different types of CSS selectors and how to write them in different formats. Then you learn about pseudo classes and elements. Then you learn how the CSS rules are applied with precedence, means you learn which rule has more precedence over the other. Then you learn how to add colors and text formatting with CSS to your HTML element. Alright, so these are the topics that we'll cover in this section. Hello and welcome to the lecture on CSS basics. So let's understand what is CSS. So CSS stands for Cascading Style Sheet. That is the full form of the CSS. And what is that style means? Style means adding colors, increasing the font of the text. Basically, you're giving a look and feel to your website. Okay, so that's what the cascaded style sheet means. Okay, so let's look at what is the purpose of CSS. So we know HTML is used to describe the structure of the web page. Then what CSS does? Well, CSS is used to design the content on the web page. So HTML does one job of structuring all the elements together. It doesn't do the designing part. The designing part is done by the CSS. When I say designing, again, adding the colors, laying out the elements in a proper format. You want header to be on top, footer to be on the bottom. You want the sidebars, all those moving of the elements on the page and increasing the font, decreasing the font, changing the color of the fonts, adding all those styles to your page is done via CSS. When we have looked in HTML, wherein you can just write plain old HTML, and then whatever you write, browser decide what color to be shown and what size to be shown. In CSS, you basically override them. You override all those basic styles and then you start defining how your font should look like, what is the color of the font should look like. You can even change all the default settings of all the default tags in the HTML. Okay, so CSS is used to design the content on the web page. So let's look at what are the things you can control via the CSS. Just a very high level overview of what you can do with CSS. Well, CSS help to control the layout of the page. When I say layout, you can move things around. When we looked at HTML, you were not able to move anything apart from just doing the align left, right and center. Right? You can actually move things around all the elements inside the page via the CSS. Then you can change the color of the text. You can change the size of the font. You can actually add the spacing between the text. So you can decide when two elements come together how much space you want. You can decide all those things via the CSS. You can decide the height and width of the elements. Basically, you're doing the complete web page look and feel via the CSS. So understand the difference between HTML and CSS. CSS is styling the page, creating the design of the page. You are changing the look and feel of your website. You are adding colors, you're changing font, moving things around, and then you're trying to give a nice look and feel for your website. That is done via CSS. CSS main purpose is to style your website. Okay, so let's look at some of the usages of CSS. CSS are written in a file with extension .css and it is linked into the HTML pages. In the next lecture, we'll understand how many types of CSS you can link into your HTML. One of the way is to write into a .css file and then include them into a HTML page. The other way is also possible, but this is one of the way. You can load the CSS once per page and it will manage the entire page layout and the presentation. So you don't have to write multiple CSS. Well, it's up to your choice, but you can still have one file, all the CSS dump into it, and then that CSS can control the whole website. And it helps to change the page layout based on the screen and site is viewed on like mobile, tablet or computer screen. Okay, this is basically responsive web design wherein you can choose to have different size and width of your website based on which media that they are used. When I say media, it could be mobile, tablet or computer screen. So this has been controlled with the CSS. CSS helps to separate the presentation work from the HTML page and the developer can actually focus on building the content and displaying it separately. So there are two teams. One team can just focus on writing the HTML page and one team can really focus on designing the things. Okay, that's basically the differentiation between HTML and CSS. So the global standards also suggest that you use CSS and do not use any HTML attributes to style the tag. If you look at any of the HTML tags, you will still find some of the styling attributes available in the HTML. So it is a global standard. Remember this standard. If you are writing HTML and CSS, make sure all your stylings go to CSS. Don't write any stylings in the HTML. Okay, HTML attributes, the tag attributes have some styling. Stop using it, because now with the CSS you should move all your styling to CSS. And also for our projects, we typically tend to use CSS. We don't really write anything in the HTML. Alright, so let's look at an example of an CSS. Let's say someone asks you to do this task. Someone say, okay, you have an h1 tag and it is black in color. So can you change the h1 tag output, which makes the text in red in color, and increase the font size by 12 points. Okay, maybe the font is 10 size, 10 points. You want to change it from 10 to 12, and you want to change the color from black to red. Okay, this is not possible in HTML because you can still use some attributes to do it, but that is not recommended. To do this kind of job wherein you are changing the color, increasing the font, this kind of stuff is done in CSS. And how it is done? This is how it has been done in CSS. Okay, the one that is on the left hand side is called as selectors. Selector is nothing but the rule which says that where this rule has to be applied. Okay, so as of now, using this selector, it is saying apply this rule on the h1 tag. Okay, that's what the selector is saying. Then you have the curly braces open and curly braces close. All these styling that you're writing for h1 tag is under this curly braces. So all this styling or properties that you're writing is called as declaration block. Okay, you're declaring the CSS inside the declaration block. Okay, and you see there are two types of declaration. They are separated with a semicolon. Color is red, font size is 12. So this is basically a property colon value and then a semicolon. If you have worked with JSON before, is something similar to that. You have a property colon value and then a semicolon. Okay, so you have two declarations. First declaration say color should be red. The second declaration say font size is 12 points. Okay, and this is how you write your CSS. And the selector is basically saying where this rule has to be applied. Now selector is saying h1, which means it's saying all the h1 tags in that page should have color red and font size as 12px. So it is changing the h1 tag setting and saying that instead of black, make it red. Instead of maybe 10 points or 15 points, make it 12 points. Alright, so this is how you write CSS. We're going to look into this in the whole section. We'll be writing CSS. You'll be playing around it. We'll changing a lot of styles in the HTML page as well. But understand the purpose of CSS. That's what I want you to understand here. The purpose of CSS is to apply styling to your web page. Okay, and this is one of the example of how do you write a CSS. So once you apply the CSS, your heading, which is basically black in color, which is plain HTML, once you apply that CSS rule saying that color is red, font size is 12px, it becomes 12px and it becomes red in color. So that's what the CSS is trying to do. I just want you to understand what is the purpose of CSS. What is the job that CSS is doing it here? It is applying that styling to your web page. You have a default output and then you are basically changing that defaults by creating a CSS rule. Okay, we're going to see how to create a rule, how to add it, but understand the purpose of CSS here. Alright, so let's create some CSS and have fun with designing the web page. Hello and welcome to the lecture on creating inline CSS. So let's start writing our CSS into your HTML file. Okay, for that I'm going to create a new folder. I'm going to call it Introduction to CSS. Okay, we have looked at what is CSS, so I'm going to give it a name called what is CSS. So this is aligned with our material folder. Then I'm going to start creating the inline CSS with numbering 2. Okay, so we'll create our example here, and I'm going to call the file name as inline.html. Okay, so you'll understand how to write inline CSS. Alright, so we go to our brackets. So instead of intermediate HTML, we'll change the folder. Now we'll change to introduction to CSS. I will select this folder. Okay, anyway, we need our boilerplate boilerplate code, so we'll open that as also. Let's open this up. Okay, let's copy this, put our inline, paste it here. We'll say inline here, inline here. Okay, so what is meaning of inline? Inline means writing CSS inside the tag. Okay, that is what inline means. Okay, so let me write it up. Inline CSS means writing CSS rules inside the HTML tags. Okay, you don't need to write in a separate file and include them. You can directly write in the HTML tag as well. It is called as inline CSS. Okay, before that, we're going to view this output. We're going to see what are the default settings from the browser. Then we'll try to change them. Okay, so you see the heading and paragraph look like that. It's black in color. So we'll try to apply our rule and try to change this default settings. Okay, so what we're going to do, we're going to open the live preview so that we can work together and make changes and then see output. All right, so I'm going to add some rules here. So heading, we will try to change it to red color. Keep things simple. Let's try to understand how to write an inline CSS. Okay, so there is an attribute called style, and this attribute is available to all the HTML tags. Okay, any HTML tag you take, you can add this attribute called style. Okay, and inside the style you can directly write the CSS rule. As and go we learn about CSS, you will learn more about rules, but a simple rule is a color, and color could be red. Right, once I save this, you don't need to save as well, the color is changed to red. So what I have done is I have overridden the default setting from the browser with my settings. Okay, now I'm controlling the web page. Okay, if you say blue, then that's become blue. If you say red, it becomes red. Okay, this is the power of CSS. You're trying to styling the page. Okay, similarly for the paragraph, now you will say style. Okay, you want to change the font weight to bold, so you can say font weight and you can simply say bold. Okay, it becomes bold there. Instead of that, what we used to do is, right, without styling, what we used to do in HTML, we used to say strong. Remember, right, we used to do this. Let's put this T here. All right, but looks exactly the same, but here we are trying to change that bold via the CSS. Okay, this is highly recommended. Okay, but it's not recommended to write CSS inline. Okay, doesn't look healthy, because if you have too many inlines, then it's hard to read. Okay, but if for simple changes, you can still continue to use strong, because that's also a standard. You can still continue to use strong to bold the text. But if you want to bold really the complete paragraph or the div tags, then you can try to go ahead with this style sheet. But as of now, try to remember what is inline CSS means. Inline means writing inside the tag. Okay, and remember there is an attribute called style that is available for all the tags of the HTML, and you can, once you say style is equal to, the value is the rule of the CSS. Okay, so you can change the color, you can change the font, you can increase the size, and you can do anything that you want with the CSS. Okay, you are basically changing the default style that is browser is having. You're trying to change it to your specific rules. All right, so that's all about inline CSS. Next we'll look different type of CSS. Welcome to the lecture on comments. So let's understand how to write comments in CSS. Okay, we'll create a folder for it. We'll copy internal and then we'll call it comments. Okay, we'll open that file in the brackets. Okay, and we will say it comments. Okay, and understand the comments that you're writing for CSS has to be inside the style. Okay, don't write CSS comment outside, because outside the CSS it will be HTML comments, right? Whatever you write here is HTML comments. Okay, whatever you write inside the style, it will become the CSS comments. Okay, so CSS comments are like this. You open the front slash asterisk and then the asterisk front slash. Okay, so that's how you write a comment in CSS. So understand there's a difference between how do you write comments in HTML and how do you write comments in CSS. So you can use this notation of / asterisk and forward slash. Okay, and whatever you write here will be applied as a comment, right? And it will not be taken into consideration for processing. Okay, so if I close this, go to live preview, then the formatting has been removed, right? It will go back to its default formatting. If you want to just do the comments for H1, you can do that like this. And how do you do single line comment? You can say single line comment. Okay, and similarly you can use the same thing for a multi-line comment as well. So here is your single line comment and here is your multi-line comment. Alright, so that's how you write a single line comment and a multi-line comment, and for single line and multi-line you use the same method. Always remember that comments for CSS is different than comments than HTML. So don't get confused and move your comments inside like this, then it will have a problem because this is not a comment in CSS. Alright, so that's how you write comments in CSS. Hello and welcome to the lecture on internal CSS. So we have seen inline. Let's look at internal CSS. Okay, so I'm gonna copy paste this file, put under internal, and I'm gonna change it to internal. Okay, as the name suggests, the internal is you're writing CSS inside the HTML file. Okay, let's open that up. Let's close inline. Okay, and make it internal. Okay, let's understand how to write the same style inside the HTML file. Okay, so we head over to the head section. Okay, there is a tag called style. Okay, and then you can mention what type of style it is. Okay, it is text/CSS. Okay, and you can close the style. So inside this you can write your CSS styles. So whatever you write here will be applied to your tags. Okay, so let's write the same styles here and make sure it has been assigned to our tags here. Okay, so how to write CSS? Okay, how to write CSS? So let's understand how to change the inline CSS with an internal CSS. Well, when you're writing CSS, you have to first mention what is a selector. Means how you want to apply this rule. So I'm saying I want to apply this rule to my H1 tag. Okay, then I open and close the flower brackets. You can choose to have flower brackets on the same line. Okay, if it's one liner you can choose to have like this, or you can write like how you write a for loop or a if condition, right? So now you are saying the selector is H1, so apply this rule for H1. Okay, now you don't have to copy style, you just have to say color : red. Okay, I want to cut this, paste it here, and make sure you end with a semicolon. Okay, now you remove this styling, you don't need style, right? And you will see here the styling is already applied. So let's close this and reopen that. Right, so you can see we have moved our styling from tag to inline inside the HTML page. Okay, and you have used the selector as the HTML tag. Okay, now we will change the another selector, that is P, and we'll say font weight is bold. All right, okay, you can see the same effect, no change in it, but this time we have used a method called internal CSS. Okay, this is how the internal CSS you will write, and remember we are writing in the head section, not in the body section. Okay, in the head section we are mentioning the style here, And then the style, we are saying we are using the select task, that is the P and the H. We are trying to change their properties. All right, and remember that the style has to be on the top, not onto the bottom. Don't put it somewhere in the bottom. The reason behind is before the page load, the browser should know what are the style that I have to apply onto these tags. If you write it down, then what browser will does it try to print them in the black, and once it is printing in the black finishes, then it's try to apply the style. But if you tell browser, okay, use this styling, so instead of printing it black, it will basically print the styles that you have applied for it. All right, and you see you haven't mentioned anything about this style applying onto this tag. Okay, this is all happening with the selector. If you change the selector, right, it's automatically taken care here. Right, this is basically the rules that you are mentioning here. I want to apply this rule on this tag. Right, you can write any tag you want. If you just say I want to apply this rule on the body, then you say everything become red, because now all the tags inside the body will have this rule of color red. And you can even say, okay, make it everything as bold. You see, everything is color red and bold. Right, so you can play around with it. You can have your own selectors and change the HTML behavior. Okay, there's a default behavior. If you don't have this selectors, let's remove this, then it will be go back to default. You can override it with the internal CSS as well. Okay, and this is how you write an internal CSS. Right, so that's all about how to write an internal CSS, and I'll see you in the next one. Hello and welcome to the external CSS lecture. So let's create a folder and we'll call it as an external CSS. All right, and we will use internal.html and we'll call it external. Okay, let's open this up. Okay, we'll call it external. Okay, as the name suggests, it's external, it's not here in the same HTML file. Okay, if it is not here, how to include that CSS file? So before that, we know if you want to write a style sheet, you have to write in .css file. So let's create that file, style.css. all right, so now you have the style sheet. You can move your style sheet. This is the rules of the style sheet. You can cut this, go to style sheet and paste it over here. Okay, so your styles has been moved. To a different file. All right, now the question is, how do you gonna call that style sheet? Okay, your style sheet is sitting somewhere in this different file, but now you want to apply this rule onto this HTML file. Okay, that is nothing but external CSS. Okay, how to include an external CSS file into your HTML file? For this, we will use a new tag in the head tag that is called as link tag. Now you are linking a resource, right? And you are saying what type of resource we are linking. We are linking a style sheet, right? CSS style sheet. And what is the type? Yes, the same type that we use, text/CSS. And then where is the file? So you'll say href, my file is style.css, and to which media you want to apply this? I want to apply to screen. All right, and I'm gonna close the link tag. So I've successfully imported a style sheet inside my HTML file. Okay, so let's look at the output now. So I'm going to save this, run the live preview, and we should see heading in red color means the style has been applied. Okay, if you give wrong names, you can see the styling is gone, so you cannot find the style. All right, so you can find the style now. So if you, what happens if you give a wrong style sheet name? Go to inspect, go to console, and you can get basically this 404 error. Okay, this 404 error is saying it's unable to find this file. So you will have such kind of errors when you make mistakes in the linking. So be aware of it. When you link something, make sure that resources is available, or else everybody who is accessing your page will get these errors onto their browser. Okay, not a good sign to show errors on the browser for your web page. Try to make sure you check all these things. Make sure all the resources that you are importing into your HTML file is available and accessible. Alright, so let's change back to style.css, and then the style has been applied. Okay, this is called as external CSS because your CSS is in style.css. Remember, we are not writing the style tag here, right? The style tag was in HTML. This is CSS. In CSS there is no HTML. Okay, so when you write CSS file, you just write CSS. You don't write the HTML code here. Okay, you just write the rules here. Okay, once you write the rules, you go to HTML page and then you use a tag called link. Again, it is in the head section. You mention what is the type, that is a style sheet. You mention what is the type of this style sheet, that is text/CSS. Then you say what is the path, then what is the media that where you want to display this. All right, so once you do that, linkage is done, then style sheet gets loaded, and then it will try to change those styles as per your rules mentioned in the style.css. That's all about how to import an external style sheet into your HTML page, and I'll see you in the next one. Hello and welcome to the lecture on linking CSS. If you want to link multiple CSS together, not in an HTML, but from one CSS you want to link another CSS, that's what we're going to learn in this lecture. Okay, so let's create a folder. Okay, we'll use these files. Okay, and we'll call it as linking. Okay, and we will call this as 2, and this will call this as 1. And what we want to do is, our actual style should be in style2.css. The style1 should include style2, and we'll include style1 in the linking.html. All right, so let's do that example. So let's import the style1. Okay, and inside style1 I want to import style2. Means your styling is in style2, but linking.html is calling style1. Okay, so there's an hop between your actual style sheet. So style1, I want to import the style2. Okay, so how you can do it? There's a statement called import. You can say style1 style2.css. Okay, and you end with a semicolon. So what happens is, when linking.html imports style1.css, that is this file will import style2.css. so this file is already available in the HTML page. Okay, so let's look at the output now. Okay, so it's red in color, means the styles has been applied, and we are looking at the linking.html page. All right, so if you see style1.css, there's nothing in the style1.css. it is importing style2.css. The style2.css is actually having your CSS. Okay, so this is how you basically do linking of CSS from one CSS file to another CSS file. You can not only import CSS, you can also import fonts, and you can import some other resources that you want to import inside the CSS. So once we go to that section, we will also try to experiment with the imports. All right, the one good method of having this is, you can split your CSS into multiple files. Right, you want to have a CSS for header, you want to have a CSS for the footer, you want to have a CSS for only the navigation menu. You can actually do that, and then you can have one CSS, that is style.css, which import all those CSS, all those snippets of the CSS. So this way you get to work with a specific small CSS, and then you have all those CSS embedded into one CSS file, which is nothing but the style.css, which will import in the HTML file. Okay, so what I mean by that is, in conceptually you might have something like this. You will have header.css, then you will have navigation.css, then you will have content.css, and then you will have your footer.css. All right, and when you go to linking.html, you are only importing one CSS file. Okay, and you don't worry about all those imports that you actually have. You have like 4 CSS, but you're not importing 4 CSS into the main HTML page. What you typically do is you write all those CSS, you create one CSS which imports all the other CSS, and you use that one CSS into your linking of your HTML page. All right. So this is the concept of linking. It's very important, and we typically use this because there will be different developers working on different sections of the CSS. So one is working on header, one is working on navigation. So this way, once they're done, they just upload their header, and we don't have to worry about changing our HTML page. All right. It's all link up with this one style.css. All right. So this is an example of how and where you can start linking of the CSS resources. Okay. So that's all on this lecture on linking CSS, and I'll see you in the next one. Hello and welcome to the lecture on debugging CSS. So let's create a folder, debug CSS. Okay, we might not be writing anything here, but what we'll do, we will copy one external or maybe internal CSS. Right, we'll copy it here and we will debug this CSS file. Okay, so let's open this in the browser. Okay, and how to debug CSS, how to see which element is having what property. So for that, you go to inspect mode. Right, once you go to inspect mode, let's open up in the maximize view. You have this arrow here. Okay, when you click this arrow, it says selected. Now you can go point to that element, which element you want. And once you are pointed, it's basically trying to tell you some property there. Right, it's red in color. So just click on it and you go to the right hand side, you find the styles here. You see the H1 is basically red. You can change it. Right, you see the changes has been done, but this changes is not permanent. This is just on this view. If you refresh, that changes will be gone. Okay, so this is how you basically debug your CSS. Typically when we write CSS, we don't really always write and refresh the page. What we do is we go in this inspect mode. Okay, and then we debug that element, and then we use these styles to change that style, and then we come up with an final style that we want, and then we go apply the style onto CSS. Okay, that's how our thinking pattern when you write CSS. Okay, you don't write CSS and refresh the page every time. You go into this debugging mode. Okay, there's an arrow here, you point to it, you find that element, you find that CSS, and then you start adding the CSS property. You can how to add CSS property, you just click on it. Okay, I've just made a click here and it's asking you to add property. You can say color is green. Okay, then once I'm okay with this setting, I'll just copy this and I'll put this in my CSS file. Okay, every time you think that okay, you have made some mistake, just refresh the page, all the changes are gone. Okay, you can even click on the element to basically, you see the styles here, click on the element, the style will change. Okay, and you want to know where it is coming from, it is coming up from debug.html. Okay, so if you are using an external one, let's review the external CSS. Let's open that up, go to inspect mode and then go to paragraph. Right, you can see it's style.css. so now you know this setting is coming up from style.css. You can click it and open that file. Okay, but the best way is you go to elements. Okay, and then you use this arrow to mark that element, then go to styles, and then you can add your own settings here. Okay, I can say color is green. Okay, you can even add new elements. If you want to add new elements, you can even do that. Right, you can say P color is blue, and I don't want to have this rule, I will just unmark it. Okay, you say it's went back to blue. Okay, so you are playing around by writing CSS on the fly. Okay, this is how we do it. We don't write in CSS because it's hard to debug from there. You have to refresh the page only to see an output, but this is the way you have to debug your CSS, and this is the fastest approach to edit the CSS files. Okay, I highly recommend you play around with this and you will get used to it, and you will find yourself doing this a lot rather than writing the CSS and refreshing the page. Okay, so you will find this inspect option in Firefox and also in the IE, where you can dynamically change the CSS and it will impact your HTML content on the fly. Okay, so that's all about how to debug an CSS style sheet, and I'll see you in the next one. Hello and welcome to the lecture on selectors. So let's understand how to create selectors. Okay, these are nothing but the rules that you write on your web page. So let's create a folder. We'll try to understand different types of selectors that you can create. So I'm gonna create each selector one file, okay, so that when you want to refer it back, you understand how many types of selectors that we have. Okay, so I'm gonna name it from 1 to 12 selectors that we're gonna see here. All right, so let's write the selectors first. So I'm gonna open my brackets here. All right, so let's open our file selector.html. So I'm gonna copy paste the basic boilerplate here. All right, so let's start writing a selector. So how do you write a selector? Okay, so let me show you the syntax first, then we're going to start writing the selectors, all different types of selectors. So the name of the selector is like this. We have seen this previously, how to write CSS. So the name of the selector is basically nothing but the name, okay, where this rule should be applied. And inside the selector you have something called as property colon whatever the value of it, and this is called as declaration. Okay, and then you can have multiple properties. If there's one property 1 and value 1, okay, you end with a semicolon and then you call this as a declaration. This is the selector and this is the declaration. So whenever I'm gonna refer to a declaration or property, I'm gonna say this is how the declaration looks like. And when we talk about selectors, you can say the first selector or h1 selector is nothing but the rules that you apply onto tags, or you can write your custom selectors and then you apply them on the HTML tags. So this is nothing but how you basically write a selector and what are the terminologies that we use, and what is called as selector and what is called as declaration, and inside selector what is a property and what is a value. All right, so let's start writing the selector. So we're going to convert this into CSS comments, right? So let's write our first selector. So I'm applying the rule on the h1 tag, okay, because we have an h1 tag here, and I'm saying color is red. Okay, this is h1 is called as selector, the color is called as property, and the value is red. Right, similarly for p tag we will apply the property of font weight as bold. Okay, let's open this file. You can do the live preview as well, and you can see the heading is red and paragraph is bold. The most important thing you have to learn is how to create a selector and what is the naming convention of it. This is called a selector, this is called as property, this is called as a value, this is called as a declaration. The declaration is complete property colon value is a declaration. You can write multiple declaration by ending each declaration with a semicolon. All right, so we have seen this. So next we will continue looking at other selectors as well. So let's create another selector. So let's create universal selector as our second selector. So I'm calling it universal. All right, let's open this. So let's open our universal.html and we're going to copy paste the same boilerplate code on the universal. All right, so the universal selector basically have something called as asterisk. Okay, this is asterisk means it's universal, so whatever rule that you apply it here will be applicable to all the tags. So if you want to apply a rule to all the tags in the HTML, you basically mention that selector as asterisk. So when you mention anything with asterisk, and I'm going to say the color is red, so I'm going to have a border to it. Let's add a border of red. So for that the property is border style is solid and border color is red. right? The interesting thing about universal selector is all the tags get a border now. Okay, then you'll understand how many tags are there and what are the properties of it. So let's look at the preview of this, and you will see boxes all around. Okay, the boxes are coming up from body tag, even the body tag, h1 tag, p tag, right? So everybody is having a border now. So you see the red border is applied for all the tags, right? That's basically coming up from the universal selector. So if you have a rule that you want to apply for all the tags in the HTML page, that's basically you will use universal selector. So that's about universal selector. Let's look at another selector called as type selector. Type selector is basically you're mentioning the HTML tags. Okay, so let's create that type selector. I'm gonna copy paste this universal selector. Right, let's open this up. I'm gonna copy paste all the type selector into this. All right, so let's understand how to define a type selector. So type selector is nothing but you mention the selector, you have a property and a value, and in the type selector you mention what type of HTML tag it is. Okay, you are really mentioning the type of the HTML tags in the type selector. You can mention the p tag here. And now you can say h1 has a border of red and p tag is border of green, right? So you can see the borders are coming up for heading tag and also for the paragraph tag. You can also mention, let's say you have one rule that you want to apply for multiple tags. So you can say h1 comma p. Okay, and I want to apply this rule for h1 and also for the p tag, and I want to say font style is italics. Right, so you can see there's one rule that has been applied to both of the tags. Okay, that's basically the type selector. In type selector you can mention multiple tags using the comma. You can just take comma comma comma, and all the tags that has been having mentioned here in the type selector, this rule will be applied onto them. Okay, type selector basically you will mention the HTML tags here. All right, so let's put this in the type selectors. We'll call it as a type selector. All right, so this is how it will look like. The h1 is having a red border, p1 is having a green border, and then we have applied italics for both h1 and p. Well, that's about the type selector. Okay, so next let's look at class selector. So I'm gonna create, copy paste the same file. So I'm gonna say class. Okay, class selectors are custom selectors. Okay, it's custom because you predefine whatever you want as a name. I'll call this as a class selector. Okay, and how do you define a class selector? You put it as a dot. So when you mention anything as a dot, it becomes a class selector, means it is not an HTML tag, but you can assign this selector to any HTML tags. We'll look at how we're gonna do it. And remember, anything that you mention dot in the front, it becomes the class selector. Okay, this is a type selector, so we'll convert it into a class selector. We'll say red border. Okay, and this one is a green border. Okay, and this one we will say it's a text italics. Okay, you see how I'm doing it. I'm putting a dot here and I'm mentioning this as a class selector, which is a custom name. So anything I can put name here. Even when I put h1, it doesn't really apply to the h1. Okay, that's basically you are mentioning as a custom name. So you can use this name to apply to any HTML tags. Okay, now that we have defined our CSS, let's apply this class to the HTML tags. Okay, you can see the HTMLs are plain simple, no CSS has been applied it here. So let's apply this class to the tags. Okay, How to apply class to an HTML tag? You can say class. Okay, that's a property of HTML tag. Then now you can say it is green border. Okay, now you can see the green border has appeared. Similarly for p tag, you can say class. Okay, you can say red border. Okay, and you can see the red border here. You can also see that I'm not typing the dot. Okay, I'm not saying dot green here. Okay, this dot is just to indicate this is a class. If you remove this, it becomes a type selector, so it doesn't understand whether it's an HTML tag or not. So to mention to the browser that this is basically a class selector, you mention with a dot. Okay, now this becomes a class, and you can apply it to any HTML tag via the class property. You can even loop the class selectors, means you want to have a green border plus you want to have another property called text italics. Okay, you can see the text has become italics. You just have to attach with the space. There's no comma here. You add multiple type selectors via the space, and you want to have the same text italics for paragraph. You can just mention like this and it becomes italics here. Well, class selectors are basically one of the important selectors that you will work a lot in CSS, and you will find yourself most of the time creating the class selectors and applying onto the HTML. So make sure you work through this class selector and understand how it works. There's one more type that you can have in class selector is assigning the class selectors to a specific HTML tag. Let's say you want to assign a green border only to h1 tag, right? You want to do that, and what you want to do is you want to apply this green border, okay, only for h1 tag. So how you're going to do it? You mention the type selector, that is nothing but the HTML tag dot the class selector. Well, this rule is saying that the green border class selector is applied only for h1 tag. So if you apply in green border to p tag or any other tag, it will not work. So you can see here the width is increased to 15 px. Let's assign this green border to the p tag and then see whether the border width will be increased or not. And here we have mentioned the rule as make sure this green border only works for h1 tag. That's what you're saying it here. And if you remove the red border and apply green border, you can see the border is green but the width is not been applied because this condition only applies for h1 tag. Okay, so that's how you work with class selectors. We're going to look at other selectors as well, and then we'll continue to use class selectors as we go forward. Okay, so that's all about the class selector, and let's look at other selectors now. Let's look at the ID selector. So let's save our file and we'll use the same class and we'll convert into an ID selector. Okay, we'll call it as ID. And how do you define an ID selector? Instead of dot, you mention hash. Okay, so we're going to convert all these things into ID selectors. So we can create same name, one with class and one with even ID selector. Okay, similarly for the green border, we'll create one more ID selector. Even for h1 italics. For this one, we can create the similar names. And also for h1.green border, how you think we're going to write the ID selector? So instead of dot, you mention hash. That's all you have to do. All right, so let's start applying the rule. Okay, there is a difference between ID and the class because you see you have same rules, one with ID and one with class. So you have to understand what is the difference between ID and the class. So we're going to discuss some of the differences here, and we'll also understand how to apply ID. Okay, so for ID you have a property called ID, and you just have to mention the property name. So I'll say green border, and I'm gonna say ID selector custom name, right? And similarly you can mention class. Okay, same green border, you can say ID selector, this is nothing but the class selector, custom name, right? We just have to say class, right? So you have the green borders. It's just selected, that's why the color changes, but it's both basically the green borders, right? Now what is the difference? You cannot have multiple rules for ID selector. Let's say you want to do text italics, okay, and you save it, it's not applied it here. Actually the rule itself is gone, right? But if you do same thing for class selector, that's possible. So remember this difference. For ID selector you have to have one selector. You cannot have multiple selectors with the spaces, okay? Once you do that, means the actual rule will be gone. It consider everything as one selector, right? For class you can loop the selectors with the spaces, okay? That's one of the differences. And ID should only be one per element. You cannot have two per element, okay? So let's quickly write those as a comment so you understand the difference between ID selectors and class selectors. ID should be only one per element. That's what we saw previously, okay? And IDs are unique. You cannot duplicate it. You're gonna see that. Then each element can only have one ID. You cannot have multiple IDs. And each page at the page level can have only element with that ID, okay? You cannot even duplicate the ID at the page level, okay? I'm going to show you that what that example means. All right, so what is this rule that says IDs are unique? Okay, you should not create lengthing like this, okay? You should not repeat IDs inside the same element. You can repeat the ID in the different elements, but don't try to make a habit of writing IDs of the same elements. All right, it won't take much impact, but the way it is ID is being used, ID is basically an identifier for your element. And if you go to JavaScript, ID is basically will be a reference point of this element in the DOM. So typically when we write ID, we tend to have unique names. We don't want to duplicate names. You'll have challenges when you want to mention IDs for your element. That is nothing but the reference names of your element. And if you duplicate it, then it's hard to find unique elements in the HTML pages. So it's always recommended the IDs should be unique. So most of the time you will find yourself to work with classes, because classes, once you mention, then you can have multiple selectors using the classes. The other benefits which we're going to discuss, and also ID is nothing but a reference of an element. So typically you use it for referring that element, okay? And make sure you don't duplicate IDs for each of the elements, okay? So let's look some of the differences between ID and CSS. Let's get a new file and find some differences there. So let's create one more file. We'll copy the ID file, say 6th, and we'll try to work with class and ID together, okay? Let's open this file. All right, so let's have a green border. Let's create a green border of class, right? And then we're gonna have a red border as well. So I'm gonna have a red border of ID, green border of this, then we're gonna have italics of a class, okay? So I'm mix and matching the IDs and class selectors. So this is nothing but the ID selector. Then I have two class selectors, one red border as ID selector, green border as class selector, and italics as the class selector. All right, now let's remove all these other conditions that we have, okay? And let's remove all these things. Let's understand the difference between ID and a class, okay? One thing we know, if you want to apply a class, right, you can have green border. You can also have ID and class together, but you need to know which one will get executed. So if I say red border, okay, so when I have class and ID assigned to one HTML tag, you can see the red border has been assigned, okay? It's here, right? You can see the differences. the red border has been assigned. It doesn't match which preference you write it. Means if you write it like this, it doesn't really matter the sequence, but ID has more preference than class. Means if you have class and ID and you have a rule that has been applied in class and ID, the ID takes the preference. If the rule is same, then ID take the preference of applying that rule. Okay, that's one difference that you have to understand between ID and the class. You know, if you have a class, you can have multiple selectors, and if you have ID, it says red border, right? So you can see the italics is still applied. That's basically the green border has been replaced with the red border because there is a clash between the same rules, same properties. So it takes the higher preference of the property for ID, and then the text italics have no clash, so it's just applied the text italics. So it is taking all the rules, then it's doing some kind of comparison between ID and a class, and the ID rules applied first, then whatever is a leftover of all the rules that has been applied onto the HTML tags, right? So remember these two most important difference. ID has more preference than class, and if you have ID and a class, all the additional rules that you have will be applied onto the HTML tags. Okay, that's why you see text italics is been applied even though ID has more preference over the class, because ID doesn't talk about the text italics. Okay, that's one of the classic differences between ID and a class. So let's look at attribute selectors. So I'm going to copy paste this. I'm going to make it 8, call it attribute selector. I'm going to delete all the ones that we don't need it. So I'm going to delete all these things. I'm going to delete all the tags. All right, and we'll call it as attribute selector. Okay, and how do you define an attribute selector? You have a selector, so inside the selector you can mention the class name and you can mention inside the square brackets, and this is basically you're defining the attribute of an HTML. You're checking whether if this attribute is available inside the HTML tag, then apply this rule. Okay, I'll give you a class an example for this. I'll say if the p tag has class, means if you have defined a class attribute for any of the p tags, any value, but attribute is present, then apply this rule. Okay, then make color as red. Okay, and font weight as bold. Okay, and it's simple to understand. If you have a p tag, this is a paragraph. Okay, the rule will not be applied, but when you have a paragraph, we'll just make it and say class, it has an attribute of class, then the rule is applied. Okay, it's easy to see the rule is only applied when you have an attribute as class. Doesn't care what value it is, but if you just have the attribute, then this rule will be applied. That's nothing but the attribute selector. You can even go a little complex than this. You can mention color, you can mention class. If the attribute is, say the attribute name is color blue. Okay, then the color is blue, and then you mention this. Right, now let's have an HR tag. Okay, if you just have the class, then the red will be applied, but if you have this color blue as the value, doesn't require to define it, but it's just taking that attribute. If the class has this value, then you see the blue is applied, which is nothing but this rule is applied. But if you don't have any value, means you have the class tag, but if you have like something else, then nothing but this rule is applied. Okay, so this attribute selector is really checking the attributes of an HTML tag. So one condition we said, right, if you have a class attribute, apply this rule. If the class attribute has this value, then apply this rule. That's nothing but this one. All right, so let's look at some more selectors. So let's look at a child selector. Okay, let's open this up. Let's say this is child. Okay, child is really like a child, like a parent and a child. You want to apply, if this parent is available and this is the child, then apply onto the child elements. Okay, so for this you have selector, and then you can mention which child of it. Okay, using this greater than symbol, you're just mentioning, okay, this is a parent on the left hand side, right hand side is a child. Okay, so let's look at one example of it. How do you write a child selector? Let's say you have a paragraph, and inside a paragraph you have an anchor tag. I want to apply this rule for the anchor tag only when it is inside the paragraph tag. All right, and I want to make it color red. Okay, let's look at an example of this. Okay, this is a paragraph of text. Okay, to the paragraph I want to have an anchor tag. And you can see the paragraph will be red in color, right? That's basically the child selector, only when the anchor tag is inside the parent tag. So what happens if the anchor tag is outside? Okay, there's no impact, it's blue in color. Okay, dark blue in color. So the impact is only available when anchor tag is inside the p tag, means anchor tag is a child tag to the p tag. Okay, what happens if you have like this? Let's write another rule, and let's say div tag and a tag. Okay, and then we'll say color is green and font weight is bold. Okay, let's write some div tags. Okay, now you have a div tag and a p tag. Okay, you have two rules. One is a under p is red, and one is a under div tag, that is green. So let's see how this will behave when the anchor tag is inside the p tag. Okay, so you can have an anchor tag here, and you can say lorem ipsum. Okay, and you can say the red is been applied. The red is nothing but this is applied because this has more preference over this, and you can see the green when it is inside the div tag, right? So understand how the parent and the child works. This is the child for this parent, this is the child for this immediate parent. So that's why the red is applied and the green is applied for this rule. So that's nothing but the child selector, and it is defined with the greater than symbol. The left hand side is the parent, right hand side is the child. When they go in this sequence, then only apply this rule. That's what the child selector says. Let's look at the another selector called descendant selector. This is the 10th one. Okay, let's open that up. Okay, and we'll call it as descendant selector. Okay, the descendant selector have something called a space. Okay, space means this is somewhere in the hierarchy, but this is the parent, and there's somewhere in the hierarchy and it is the child. Okay, a very good example is body. Okay, so inside the body you have any anchor tag, please make it red in color. Okay, irrespective of the div tags and p tags. So you see the a tag is under p tag, a tag is outside, a tag is under div tag, a tag is under p tag. But this descendant selector says apply this rule whenever it is inside the body, irrespective of the hierarchy. So if you see all the link tags become red in color. That's basically this rule says descendant that there is no immediate relation between child and parent, but anywhere in the hierarchy, means if I am the parent and he is the child, irrespective of under any other parents, right, apply this rule. So it's a global condition that you apply, right? Inside this body, if you have any anchor tag, all the anchor tags, so any anchor tag inside the body, this rule will be applied to it. And how you define the descendant selectors, you mention something called a space. Okay, and once you have space, means this becomes the parent, this becomes the child. Okay, and if you just say div tag, okay, you can see this is not applied because this is under the paragraph. Okay, this parent and the child could be anywhere. You see P, under P also a tag is there, so that's why the relationship still exists between parent and the child irrespective of the sequence. All right, so that's how the descendant selectors work. Let's look at adjacent sibling selector. Let me type it. Adjacent sibling selector. Okay, let's open that file. Okay, the adjacent selector goes with a symbol called plus. Okay, if div plus a, okay, let's look at where it has been applied. So no condition has been applied, there's no anchor tag become red. So this rule says the div and the a must be adjacent and sibling, right? What is adjacent and what is sibling? So let me give you an example. So if you see here, the anchor tag is inside p tag, and anchor tag div tag is having anchor tag, but this is not adjacent. You know what is adjacent means? Adjacent means, let me put that for you. Okay, if you're having some text here, okay, it has to be sibling as well. This is parent and a child, right? A is under div, means a becomes child, div becomes parent. Then what is sibling means? Sibling means they are side by side, right? They are side by side, they are adjacent and side by side. That's why you see the rule has been applied now, color red. Okay, they are sibling and they are adjacent, means if you have, let's say you have h1 tag here, right? Now div and a are not adjacent, they are siblings but they are not adjacent. Okay, adjacent means the rule has to be applied right after the div tag, then only this rule will be applied, and it is called as, here is applied, it's called as adjacent sibling selector, which is nothing but denoted with plus, which means they have to be at the same hierarchy, that is the same sibling, same hierarchy level, cannot be inside like parent and child, it should be under the same level, and then it should be immediate right after that tag, then only this rule is applied. Adjacent means one after the other, sibling means same level, and that's how the rule is applied when you mention it as a plus. The a tag has to be right after the div tag, and it should be under the same sibling. All right, so let's look at another example. Let's look at another example, which is called as general adjacent sibling selector. So it's called as general adjacent sibling selector. Let's open this up. It's same as adjacent sibling selector with some differences. Okay, and it is denoted by the tilde symbol. This is a symbol you can find beside the number 1 keyboard. This is a tilde, right? So now you say tilde, okay, and you can see this special case, this case, right? You can see the color red is been applied. You can see color red is applied even though they are not in the same adjacent. Okay, this is basically general, means it is at the same sibling, but don't have to be right after the div. It could be after anywhere in the same sibling but not adjacent. Okay, so you can say this rule says same sibling but not adjacent. Okay, so if you look at even this example, you have an HR tag. Okay, you can see the rule is keep applying because the rule says same sibling. Okay, if you have a tag inside a div tag, that rule is not applied, but if it is sibling anywhere in the hierarchy, then this rule has been applied. That's nothing but general adjacent sibling selector denoted with tilde. Alright, so these are the 12 selector rules that we're going to use to write CSS. Make sure if you want to learn some important topics in CSS, you learn the selector section. Okay, selectors nothing but tell you how you write your rules. Once you understand how to write the rules, you can refer to the guides and all those references to understand what are the property and the value. Just apply property and the value, but you need to know where and how you need to apply it and how to play around with the CSS. If there is inside a page, if there's one corner of the page you want to apply one style to it, you need to know how do you transverse and reach to that particular section of the page. Okay, with this rule, selector rules, it will help you to identify that particular section in the page and apply that rule only onto that HTML tag. All right, so that's all about how to work with selector, and I'll see you in the next lecture. Hello and welcome to the lecture on pseudo classes and elements. So let's understand how to write pseudo classes and elements. Okay, let's create a file. We'll call it as pseudo class. Then we'll look at pseudo elements. Okay, we'll use a boilerplate. So we'll go to type selector, copy this. So we'll go to selector, copy this as a boilerplate, and then we'll go to our pseudo classes. We paste it here. Okay, then we'll call it as pseudo selector CSS. Okay, this is a class, pseudo class. We'll see what a pseudo class means and how to write it. Okay, so how to write pseudo classes. Okay, for some of the selectors you have something called as pseudo classes, which you can define it via colon, and then you can mention the pseudo class. You can define the class or basically the attribute for that specific selector. Okay, let's take an example of anchor tag. Okay, anchor tag have pseudo classes, like it has link. Okay, and also it has visited. If someone has clicked that link, what action you want to show on that link, means you want to change the property of that attribute. Hover and then active. Okay, so let's write these conditions here. For the link, I want the color to be blue, right? Someone visited, I want the color to be gray, means it's showing that you have already visited this link. Someone go on the link, hover means when you mouse over the link you make it red, and active means green. Okay, so let's write our anchor tags here. So we'll define 3 links. We'll say hash. So we can say home page. We can actually give different links so that we know whether it's visited or not. Okay, and then 3. Contact in the about page. Okay, so we have 3 links with the different hrefs, and you will see the pseudo classes is been applied onto anchor tags depending on the action that has been happening on that tag. So if I refresh this page. Let's close this, open up the new live editor. Right, so everything is in blue in color, right? You see when you hover on it, it becomes red in color. That's basically coming up from this. Okay, it's red in color when you hover on it. That's called hovering, right? So when you click something, right, when you visited that page, it becomes gray. So let's click this. Right, now this link has become gray because of this property. You have visited that, so that's why it become the gray. You can click on contact, you can click on the home page. Okay, so what is active? When you click and hold, you can see it's active, right? Click and hold, it's active. Click and hold, it's active, it's green. Where here are some of the pseudo classes. So some of the tags will have pseudo classes wherein you can play around of its attribute, how you want to define it, and you can change the property of it when you basically write some condition in the CSS. Like one good example is a hovering. When you hover on this link, you want to change the color. Maybe when you hover on an image, you want to change the image. Those kind of things can be done via the pseudo classes. Okay, so let's look at pseudo elements. So for this, I'll create one more file. And I'll call it pseudo elements. Okay, let's open this file. Okay, the pseudo elements is defined with double colon. Okay, let's define some pseudo element. I'll define a pseudo element for h1 and I'll say after this tag, what you want to do. After this tag, I want to add a content of, let's say I want to add like this, right? So after every h1 tag, you will see these symbols. Whatever symbol you can add like this, or you want to add dashes or whatever symbol that you add it here will be available. So this content is available after the h1 tag. Okay, so we have an h1 tag here, and if you see the h1 tag, so you see the exclamatory mark is basically coming after the heading. So even the text is not there, you are adding that content via the pseudo elements. Okay, this is how you define a pseudo element, and then you can do whatever conditions or rules you want to apply onto that element. Another good example is for paragraph. For the p tag, the first letter, right, you want to increase the size. So you will say font size of 200%, and let's say you write a p. This is a text which has first letter bigger, right? And you go ahead over here, see the first letter. The first letter is 200%. You can increase to 500%. Okay, you can see you can play around with your text as well with something called a pseudo element. Pseudo elements work before and after most of the times, and you can change the behavior of the text using this pseudo elements as well. Okay, how you define it? You define it with double colon. Pseudo classes with colon and pseudo elements with double colon. Okay, so that's all about pseudo classes and elements, and I'll see you in the next one. Hello and welcome to the lecture on CSS precedence. Precedence is basically understanding how the rules will be applied onto the HTML pages, in what sequence these rules will be applied, and which get the higher priority to apply that rule onto the HTML. Okay, we have looked about so many selectors. We have looked at inline, external, and all those type of CSS that we can apply onto HTML page. Now we'll take a step back and understand when we apply all these rules, which gets the higher precedence, means which get executed and applied onto the HTML tags. Okay, so we'll look at various examples of how the CSS rules apply onto the HTML tags. So for that, we'll create one folder and I'll call it CSS rules. We'll create a file, precedence. Let's quickly open this up in the brackets. right? So I'm going to copy paste some of the CSS rules here, then we'll understand how the precedence will work. So I've copy pasted some of the CSS rules and simple plain HTML tags. We have seen through all these examples of how to write CSS and how to use them. So let's understand what is the CSS here and how the order of preference works. Okay, so we have for H1 we have blue color, for P we have applied green color, for P and H1 both we have applied color red. Okay, so H1 have blue, P has green. When you write P comma H1 means same rule applied for both of them. I made it red. So let's see whether the head and P will have blue, green or red. Then for div I have red. Then for ID selectors I have used color blue, that is text blue. Text green is a class selector. Then for div text blue means when you say div and text blue, I have made it light blue. So let's see when you use and combine all this CSS together, how they behaves and which one gets executed first. Okay, so let's do the div tag first. So when say div ID, I'm gonna say text blue, that's nothing but the ID class selector. Then we will have a class text green. Okay, so we have both the colors text blue and text green, and all the text here like CSS rules, which is more specific, has more precedence. Okay, we will add a BR here. ID has more precedence than class. Yeah, okay, so let's view this file. Okay, here we have applied this rule to the div tag blue and text green, but you can see the light blue has been applied. The div text blue, the div text blue has more preference. This has more preference over these two. Obviously the ID has more preference than the class, but if you attach it with a div tag and then for that ID, for div for that ID, this rule is applied. So it is CSS rule which has more specific, okay, has more precedence. Even though the text blue, this blue was not applied, the light blue was applied. All right, so let's look one more example. All right, so let's look at the H1 and P tags. So for H1 and P tags we have these three conditions: H1 blue, P green, and P and H is red. Okay, you can see both of them are red. The reason behind it is more specific. P and H you are saying has to be red in color, right? That's why they are in red in color, right? The individual definitions plus a combination of tags definition has more preference than the individual ones. Okay, so understand these differences. We'll create one more file and then we'll understand it. We'll create one more file out of it. We'll say inheritance. We'll see how the inheritance work. So in this we will remove all this. Okay, and we will have a body. So for body we'll do coloring. We'll say color is white. Okay, and background color is red. Right, now this has been applied for everything because that's the body tag. Then now you will override. Okay, H1, okay, we'll say text decoration underline. So we have the underline here, and we say background color. Change for H1, right? You say black. Okay, so this is basically you're overriding the styles that has been applied. So first the body was applied, then the H1 was applied, and now let's do a black screen. For black screen we say background color is black. So now what we can do is we can just try to understand the concepts, how it actually works. Okay, let's write a P class. Black screen. Okay, okay, and let's write an anchor tag here. Okay, and whatever you're gonna write it here, this is a test. Okay, this is basically the black screen is applied even to the internal tags. You can see even the anchor tag is getting that black screen. Okay, this is basically the hierarchy. So whatever the parent is having the class, it is applied onto the child tags as well. Okay, and also if you apply the same rule onto the parent element, all the child elements can override it, and also if they don't override, they by default get the parent element. Like paragraph text, we haven't override the paragraph text style, so it took the style from the body and applied it for himself. So this is basically a concept of inheritance, whereas the paragraph is inheriting the styles of body. Here the p tag is overriding the parent's style, right? It is overriding the black screen. So this is how you can basically play around with having inheritance. Like you can define one common style you want for everybody, then you can override whatever styles you want for specific individual tags. Okay, and remember, when you override that specific, the more specific will be applied to the rule, right? H1 has more specific rule, so H1 conditions will be applied onto the CSS styling. All right, so let's look one more example, and let's call it last. Let's do the third one, and this is called as last win rules. Okay, whatever is a rule that is in the last will get higher preference. Okay, let's do that example. So I'm removing all the styles, I'm removing all the text. Let's understand it. So we'll define some styles here. We'll say body has color red. Similarly, the color red we want to put for H1 and p tag. So all the H1 p body should be in red in color. Okay, and then we are saying we create one more ID selector and of text red, and we'll say color is red. Then we'll do a class. Okay, and what we can do is we will now do H1 and H1 dot text red. Okay, so what we are trying to do is we are trying all the ways to make body H and P as red in color. Okay, then we'll look at which conditions wins first. Okay, you remember about the inline style sheet, so we'll do an inline style sheet and we'll say color is green, right? Then we'll also apply the class text red. Then we'll also apply ID text red, and we'll say headings. So can you guess? Okay, you cannot see the output, so can you guess which of the condition is been applied to headings? That's what we are talking about. Which is the last condition that has been applied onto the H1 tag? Well, that's the green, not the red. We have even done so many ways of applying this red onto H1. We have defined the ID and the class specific to H1. We even did the body as red, H1 as red, but you know, the last condition that's applied is the inline style sheet. So remember this, whenever you have any CSS anywhere written, if you want to have a CSS specific at that moment of time and you want that to apply onto your HTML tag, you can go ahead with the inline style sheet. All right, so let's do a last example, and that is called as important rule. Okay, let's open this up. In the same condition, let's say you want H1 to be red in color, right? You want this red to be applied to your conditions and you don't want anybody to override it. You don't want anyone in line to override it. What you can simply do is you can go to the h1 and you can say important, right? Exclamatory mark, and you are saying a word called important. So when you say important, nobody can inherit it anymore. You try to inherit also, the important one gets executed. This is one of the way to make sure nobody inherits your property or nobody overrides your property. Okay, you can mention this anywhere you want, it will still be applied onto your tag, right? So this is basically called as important rule. Basically you do an exclamatory mark and then you use a word called important. So wherever you apply this, that rule cannot be overridden. Okay, and that rule will always be get executed. Okay, so these are the 4 types that we have seen. Precedence we have seen, inheritance we have seen. When we have seen the last when rule, that's basically the inline style sheet, then we have looked at important rule, which basically means you cannot override it. Okay, it's always get executed. So these are some of the things that you should know when you work with CSS. How is the precedence works, how inheritance works, and how to make a logical decision. When you're writing the CSS, you should know, when I write this, will it be applied or will it be overridden by something else? You will always have this challenge wherein you're writing CSS but it's not getting executed. That's basically these 4 concepts will help you understand how to make sure your CSS will be applied onto your HTML tags. And even though other CSS will be available for it to apply, yours get the most higher preference to apply onto the HTML tags. Well, that's all about precedence and CSS rules, and I'll see you in the next one. Hello and welcome to the lecture on colors and text. So let's learn some properties about colors and text. So I'm going to create a folder. You create 2 different files, one for colors and one for text. Right, so let's open this up. You can take any of this as a boilerplate and we'll copy paste this and we'll remove everything. Right, and we will say colors. And colors here. So let's understand, when you deal with colors, okay, you can go to this site htmlcolorcodes.com. Let me open this up, and this will tell you different types of color coding that you have. You have hexa and RGB and HSL. Okay, you can choose any color you want, right? And he will give you the hash and RGB or an HSL or CMYK. Okay, and you can see how you can apply this onto the web page. Well, you can take this hexadecimal value or an RGB value and see how you can apply this onto your web page. Okay, so from this website HTML color codes, you can pick any color or you can choose any of the colors that you like you want. Take it from the palette, you can choose this color, then you get the hexadecimal and RGB. Then we'll try to use this value and print the same color onto our web page. Okay, that's the example we'll see here. So first thing we will do is we will define our style. We'll define different styles of it. Okay, so I'm going to copy paste this URL and I'm going to paste it here. Okay, so let's define our div tag. We'll say padding is 10px and we'll make the width of that box as 50%. So you get a nice box, right? Font size is, if you write a font inside it, you get the 40px fonts. Okay, I'm just drawing a box, simple box, padding of 10, so that's an padding, 4 sides padding. Then you have a width, so this is a box like a 50% width, right? Then we will try to add colors now. So I'm going to add a red box, okay, using RGB. Okay, and let's say, how do you add the background color for that box? You can see the background color and you can really type RGB and you can pass R value, G value and B value. So if you want to draw a red color, you just say red and everything else is 0, right? And the text color will be white. Similarly, if you want the same red box using the hexadecimals, right? You want in hex. Okay, instead of RGB you can mention the hash code of it, which is FF0000. okay, similarly in the text, if you have a name, you can simply say red and it will still work. And you can even say, you know, dark or light of it, which you can say dark red, light red, red, you know, all those things. Okay, so now you have created this CSS. Let's create some boxes and we'll see how it works. Okay, the first box we'll create is RGB with red box with RGB, so we'll say red box RGB, right? And we'll say red box RGB, which is nothing but 255 0, 0. Okay, this will draw a nice red box. You can see the nice red box has been drawn here, right? You can now, let's draw the another boxes. Okay, this time we will use the hex, right? And you can see the box is still drawn there, which is nothing but hash FF0000. okay, you can continue to do this by saying red, box name, not red. Okay, and then dark name, I believe. Okay, you got the dark red box here. All right, so you can see it's so simple to work with colors in this. If you pick any of these colors, let's pick some colors here. Let's say you pick this color, you can get the RGB value, that's the hexadecimal value. You can directly go ahead and paste it here, right? You remove that hash, yeah, you can get this, and then once you want to print that, just refresh and you can see the color is already here. I'm going to refresh as well. All right, so this is one good site, HTML color codes, where you can find various types of colors. You can find in RGB, you can find in hexadecimal. If you have a name of the color, you can just use the name of the color, dark and light of it, and you can start working with the colors. All right, so let's look at another example on the text. What type of options we have for the text? So I'm going to copy paste this, paste it for text, and I'm going to remove all the CSS, right? And we'll remove the boxes as well. For the text, I'm going to copy paste the lorem ipsum so that we have some text to play around. All right, so what I've done is I've copy pasted the text, that's lorem ipsum, and also I have pasted some of the properties like font family. You can specify the font name. Well, font size is your size of the font. Font style is basically italics, normal or oblique. Then the weight, how much bolder you want. And then transform, you can transform into uppercase, lowercase. Decoration, you can have underline, overline. Then you can also have a shadow. Okay, so let's play around with our text now. I'm going to close this. So open up the text live preview. I'm going to change this to text. Right, so that's our text. The first thing we'll play around with the first letter. So we'll say first letter, and we'll say font size is 200%. Okay, that's increase that L there. Okay, you can even have first line. Okay, you can have a text shadow, none. Okay, so we removed the shadow from the first line, and then we'll try to add the shadow now. Okay, now we'll try to add all those settings for your font settings for your paragraph. Okay, first thing we will change is we will change the font type. Okay, so we'll say font family. The first thing you mention is the font name, so I'm say Times New Roman. Then we'll say what type of font you want. You want the serif font, and then I'm gonna say font size is 20px. Okay, right there you see the 20px font already. Then line height 2 em, that's the height, that's the spacing between the line, each line. You can see the spacing between each line. Then you can say letter spacing as well between each letter. Okay, so you can say 0.2 em, so there's a spacing right there between each alphabet. Then you can have word spacing as well. Okay, word spacing you can say 1 em, so you have this space between each word, right? Then you can make the font style as italics, right? So it's italic now, right? Next we'll apply font weight as bold, so it's bold now. Okay, then we can say text transform to uppercase. Okay, so let's do text indentation now. This is indent, right? Then we'll add a text shadow, and we'll add the shadow all around with the red color, right? So this is how your text looks like now. Okay, so you can see the power of CSS. You can actually do anything you want with the text. You can add spaces between the word, you can add spaces between the letter, you can decide how your shadow should look like, how your text should look like, you want how big your font size will be. Okay, it's just few simple settings you can actually play around with the text, and this is the output you can just do with the CSS itself. Here's some of the reference I gave you. Obviously there will be a lot of CSS rules applied for text, but these are the basic ones that you will find yourself using a lot. Well, that's all about colors and text in this lecture, and I'll see you in the next one. Hello and welcome to the lecture. Let's do some quick review and some things to remember before you finish this section. So first thing, CSS stands for cascading style sheet. That is the full form of CSS. CSS is used to design the content on the web page. That's the purpose of CSS. CSS can be written inside the HTML page. You can write inside the tag or outside in a separate file. CSS should be written in .css file, which you can include in the HTML file as well. Then we learned about types of selectors, universal selectors, type selectors, class selectors, ID selectors, attribute selectors, child selectors, descendant selectors, adjacent sibling selectors, general adjacent selectors. Well, we have seen all the selectors and we have worked through all the examples of this. Then we have looked at pseudo classes, which is written using colon, and pseudo element, which is written using double colons. On the CSS rules, we saw two important rules. First one was inline CSS has the higher precedence. So anything that you write CSS on the tag will get the higher precedence. If you manually want to emphasize that you want some rule to have higher precedence, then you use something called as exclamatory mark important. They used to give higher precedence to that particular rule. Okay, so these were the things we covered in this section, and I hope you have understood what is the purpose of CSS, how to write CSS, and what types of selectors are available, and how you can apply your design to your HTML tags. Alright, so that's all for this lecture, and I'll see you in the next one. Welcome to the section summary. So by now you should be able to understand what is CSS. You should know how to write CSS in HTML file via inline, internal, external, and linking. You should also understand how to write and debug CSS. You should know how to create CSS selectors in different ways. You should know what are pseudo classes and elements. Then you should understand what is CSS rules and which has the higher precedence. Then you should know how to add colors and text to your website. Alright, so that's all we have learned in this section. So let's move on to the next section now. Hello and welcome to this section on intermediate CSS. Let's look at what are the topics we'll cover in this section. Well, after completing section, you will be able to understand of CSS box concept, how to draw boxes with CSS. Then we'll understand how to move those boxes around the pages. Then we'll understand how to float them left, right, and any position that you want. Then we'll understand how to position the elements with CSS. Then what is display inline or block. Then you'll learn how to import Google Fonts onto your web page and how to create a favicon for your site with CSS. Alright, and finally we will build some website layouts with HTML and CSS combined together. So these are the topics that you will learn in this section. Hello and welcome to this section or intermediate CSS. So we have finished introduction to CSS. So let's understand some interesting concepts around CSS. That's basically how do you do a layout of your web page. Till now you have seen how to work with understanding how to write CSS, what are the different rules of CSS, and then how to work with colors, text and all those things. So there's one important concept in CSS is about laying out your content. And then you will understand some of the concept like how to create boxes, how to do floating of the columns, how to move the boxes around, how to position those boxes one after the other or in line or one after the other. Then you can understand how to play around and create the layouts like header, footer, sidebars. You can move those boxes anywhere you want inside the pages. You'll also understand how to work with importing the Google font, also work with the shortcut icon that you can apply it for your web page. Alright, so we'll learn all these concepts. So let's start creating the folder and understand how to create a box first and what are boxes in HTML pages. So for this I'll create a folder called intermediate CSS, and the first folder we'll create is called as CSS box. Okay, we'll create a couple of examples here and we'll understand how to create a box and what is actually a box in CSS. Okay, so let's draw a box first. That is your first example. Okay, and let's open this folder. So we were in introduction to CSS, say open folder. We'll go to intermediate CSS and we'll select this folder. Okay, and then we'll draw the box here. So for this we will copy the code from previous files. Let's take the select as. We'll go to type. We'll edit this with the brackets, copy paste this. I'm going to close this again and I'm going to paste it for draw box. Okay, so we'll say draw box here. Okay, and we're going to remove all the CSS here and then all the HTML here. I'm going to remove this definition of CSS and let's simply draw a box. So what we're going to do is the body, the text of the color we will say white. Then we will create a box. Okay, how do you create a box, a rectangular box, right? First you will have a background color for it, right? Let's say red. Okay, and you can mention height and the width, that's all. Then whatever is the height and the width, that becomes a box. Okay, so we're gonna see that. So we'll say we want to draw an 100 of 100 box, that's a square box, 100 in width and 100 in height. Okay, let's draw a box now. Let's say box and we just say red box, right? There's nothing I'm doing it here, I'm just trying to show you a box. Then we will play around with this box by moving this box around, putting multiple box together. But first you have to understand how to draw a box. Very simple to draw a box. You just change the background color, then you change the height and the width of the box. Okay, so let's look at the box now. Okay, you can see a simple box here, right? A simple box is drawn with a red color inside it. So now you have understood how to draw a box. Let's add some border to it. Okay, let's go to intermediate CSS, create another example. Let's call this border box. Right, let's open this up. we'll say border. Alright, so I'm going to delete everything. We're going to create some more examples to understand this concept of how to add borders to the box. Okay, so let me show you what are the properties we have. So I'm going to copy paste the properties of a bordering the box. You have border style, border color, border width, border top style, and border bottom style. So before that, I want to show you the border. Okay, so for this, let me use a universal selector, and I'm saying the border style is solid and the border color is red. All right, and I have some h1 and div tags and some text inside it. Right, the universal selector will show you all the different boxes that you can have around the tags. Right, so there's a magical box around every HTML tags. You can see the boxes around each of the elements. So we'll try to play around with these boxes. All right, so I'm gonna cut this out and put it inside. Okay, so let's play around with these boxes now. So for every div that we have written, we'll draw a box. So we can say border style is solid. You can have dashed as well. So let's look at the, so you can see the solid style here. All right, then the border color red. Okay, you can see it's red in color, the border is red in color. Then the border width is, let's say, 4px. Okay, so width of that border is 4px. Okay, then you can say border top style is dashed. Means you can control the top border. You are just saying apply this rule onto the only the top border. And you can say bottom style to be dotted. Right, so you see you have changed the settings of the border as well. Okay, that's what we are trying to understand, and we are all playing around with the boxes. Okay, let's draw two colors of border, blue color and the red color. We say border of 5px, and you can say solid and blue in color. Then you can also have red border or green border, and you can say sand green. Right, so let's apply this blue border and the green border to this borders. Okay, so we have three borders, 1, 2 and 3. That's basically 3 divs. So let's apply the second div as blue in color. The first is red, so we'll say blue border. So you can say it's blue border solid. Right, then you can have green border. Okay, so you can see blue border and the green border, and then this border we have play around with these borders. The only thing that you have to understand is every tag has borders. Okay, and then you have styles to play around with the borders as well. Okay, let's look at the margin between the boxes. Okay, so let's create another file. And we'll say box margin. Let's open this up. Okay, so I'm going to remove all these conditions here. We'll create different boxes and we'll add margin to those boxes. Alright, so I've copy pasted some of the margin properties. Okay, so margin can be used to add spaces between the boxes. So every tag that you see, the div tag is one box, so you can add spaces between the two div tags, that is the two boxes. And the properties that you have is margin, margin top, margin right. So you're going in a clockwise direction, top, right, bottom and left. Okay, like a clock you're going. So you have to think like a clockwise direction, top, right, bottom and left. Okay, so when you define the condition, you can mention top, right, bottom and left like this, or you can mention it only via one parameter. So one parameter, when you say margin is 5px, which means top is 5px, right is 5px, bottom is 5 and left is 5. You can even choose to have all four defined with spaces, right? You're not saying margin top, margin right, margin bottom, but you're basically saying apply the margin for all the different areas, right? Top 5, right 5, bottom 5 and left 5. You can even mention 3 of them. So you're saying top is 5, left and right is 5, that is left and right, and bottom is 5px. All right, so this is how you can play around by adding margins. So let's create some margins here, and then we'll attach it to the div tags that you have created here. Okay, so we'll create a red border and we'll say border. Okay, so when I say 5px, it is 5px top, right, bottom and left, right? And when I'm saying solid, it's a solid line. You can have dashed line or dotted line, then it's red in color. Okay, and I'm saying margin bottom 25px, so that's basically the margin between the boxes. So I'm pushing some boxes down 25px. So I'm gonna have a blue border and I'm gonna have a green border. Okay, so I'm gonna say the margin for first one is bottom at 25px, and the second one top, I'm pushing it by 25. Okay, and then the left, I'm pushing it by 20. Okay, I'm just trying to add some spaces, top and left, top and left, right? So left I'm adding maybe 50 and top is 25. Okay, and I'm going to change the color. This is green, this is blue. Okay, the first margin example with solid red line. Okay, that's the first thing. So we'll use a class of red border that we draw. Okay, you can see the margin example with solid red line. So red line is not visible, so we have red border here. We have say colon, then we should be able to see a red border here. Okay, next is margin example with dashed red line. Okay, how do you draw a dashed red line? So let's look at border first. Okay, you have the border, right border. Now I will add a style to it, inline style, to say the border style is dashed. Right, you can see the dashed is coming. So how do you do dotted? Same thing, and you can say dotted. Okay, you get the dotted red line, and you can see the space margin that is being adding. Okay, similarly you can have solid blue line, dashed blue line, dotted blue line, solid green color, dashed blue color, and the dotted green line. Okay, so I'm going to copy paste all the other conditions, and you can see all the different margins that we have created. All right, so if you look at the example, the one that I wanted to focus is on the spaces, the margins, right? If you look at the margin onto these 3 boxes, okay, right here 3 boxes. Okay, the margin is at the bottom. For the red, the margin is at the bottom, right? That's why you see the space at the bottom. For blue lines, for all the blue borders, right, for all the blue borders, you say the margin top is 25 but left is again 20. That's why you see there's a margin onto the left and the top. Okay, and for the green ones, you say the left is 50, right? So that's why there are more spaces on the left. Okay, and again also onto the bottom and the top, you will definitely have some margins there. So you're adding some margin onto the top, and on the margins onto the red you have bottom margins. For blue boxes you have left margin which is 25, and green you have added 50. So you're moving the box, right? And how's the output? The output looks something like this. Okay, it's look like all the boxes are arranged in a sequence with some spaces in the front, right? That's basically coming up from your margins. If you look at your margins here, that's basically adding up the spaces. Okay, it's not about borders here, but it's about adding the margin. I have added some borders just to show you, to visualize you how is the space. If I remove the borders, you cannot see the spaces. That's why we have added the margin. So margin is not inside, okay, it's outside. Okay, remember that, always remember margins are outside. If you want to see an example of what is the margin looks like, think of like this, right? You have a margin top, you have a margin right, margin bottom, and a margin left. So you're trying to add spaces onto top, means you're adding the spaces on the top and on the right, on the bottom and the left. And if you look at the lines, you're not adding inside, you're adding outside. Okay, that's basically the property of margins. And again, how you can add different ways of margin is all over here. Okay, so next let's look up adding the padding. Padding is inside, the spaces is inside the box, not outside the box. Okay, so I'm going to copy paste the padding. I'm going to add the file here, box padding. Okay, padding exactly similar as like margin. The only difference is padding will add spaces inside the box. So you see the padding is added inside the box. Let's review what we have done. We have removed the margin, we have added padding here. Again, padding top, padding right, bottom and left. And you can say padding all around the box. Then you can basically see the space inside the box. Okay, there is no margin here. If you look at this, there's no margin on the left or bottom or top. That's why it's all the boxes are attached together, because there is no space between the boxes. Padding, you have added the around 4 sides. That's why you see the spaces are around 4 sides. Okay, so understand the difference between adding a padding onto the top, padding onto the left, and padding is all sides. And if you see from this, there is no margin, right? There's no margin. That's why all the boxes are attached together. If you look at the previous example, let's open the previous. The margins, basically what we had is outside the spaces. The spaces outside the boxes. Padding is inside the boxes. Okay, you have the same example of top, right, bottom and the left. Okay, then you can play around with the boxes. There's one more example called box size. Let's open that up. Box size. Okay, you can mention the size of the box, right? We saw how to draw a box with height and the width. You can mention that size with width, height, minimum width and minimum height, and then maximum width and maximum height. So you draw boxes. When you draw boxes, you mention height and width. Then you draw margin. Then you would say this is the minimum width, it has to be there. You cannot go smaller than this. That's the minimum width. And when you say maximum, that's the maximum you can have for the boxes. Okay, let's open this file. Okay, you can see 250 by 250, which means height is 250, width is 250. Okay, and then you have padding. So you see the spaces, there's no space here. You're adding a padding of 10, you see a nice space coming up here. Okay, and then for each boxes you have adding some space. That's why you see some space. That is the margin that you're adding. Okay, and then you can have the flexible boxes, which means this has no limit, so it will grow as you increase it, right? It's increase as it grows because it has no min and max height. Okay, if you have min and max height, you cannot grow bigger than this. Max means maximum, you can grow that big. That will be restricted by the CSS, and then you cannot grow bigger than that. Okay, this is all basically playing around with the boxes. You are trying to create a space in the web page, and then you're trying to create some space on top, on the right, on the bottom and the left. You're creating outside with the margin, inside with the padding, and then you are trying to have the width of that box, maximum width, minimum width, height and the width of that box. Okay, so this is the very good example if I want you to try. You have how to draw a box, how to draw borders, how to draw margins, how to draw padding, and then how to define the size of that box. Okay, so do this exercise, understand how these things work, and have some exercises done around it by defining multiple boxes. You may not be able to place box one after the other because that's the nature of the box when you don't have other conditions, which we're going to learn in next lectures. But draw as many boxes you like, put some colors in it, try to do some play around with it by attaching two boxes, having some space, having the space inside. So you'll understand how the box works, because once you understand how the box works and how to move the boxes, you will understand how to create a layout for your web page. Okay, so it's a very important concept. I want you to give a try for understanding how to work with boxes. All right, so that's all for this lecture on creating CSS boxes, and I'll see you in the next one. Hello and welcome to the lecture on floating boxes. Now that we have learned how to create boxes of different size and shape, how to color them, how to add borders on top and bottom, and we have understood what is margin and padding of a box. Now we have understood boxes, let's move the box around in the web page. That's what we're going to learn in this lecture. Okay, so we're going to move the boxes and then we'll see how we can play around with the boxes. Okay, so we can say floating box. In this we're going to create a file, create different examples of floating the boxes. We're also going to create some menus out of it, like horizontal menu and a vertical menu. We'll also float some images. Okay, so we're going to have fun in this exercise by floating the boxes. Okay, so I'm going to add the boilerplate here. So here's a boilerplate. So what we're going to do, we're going to define a box. Let's define a box. Okay, we'll create multiple boxes and then we're going to see what are the properties that you can use to float the boxes, which is called as moving the box. So I'm going to say height is 130 px and width is again 130 px. We're going to have a margin bottom of 10 px. This is a margin, not padding. Margin means having space between the boxes. And we're going to have a margin of right of 10 px, right? So we have a box. Let's define two colorful boxes. One is blue color box and one is green color box. Okay, the blue color box, we can see the background color. That's how you color the box. You can say blue and you can say green. All right, now you have two boxes. Let's print those boxes and see how the boxes will look like. So we're gonna have like 5 blue boxes, 3 green boxes, so we're gonna have like, say, class. We need to have box and then we're going to have blue boxes, right? So we're going to have 1 2 3 4 5 and then we're going to have the 3 green boxes. Just going to copy paste this. Okay, nothing fancy here. I'm just drawing up boxes here, and boxes are like blue boxes and green boxes. So let's view this page. Okay, so you have like 5 blue boxes and green boxes. Now what I want to do is I want to float the boxes in line, which means side by side. Okay, now you see you have no control on the boxes, right? You cannot move the boxes around. Let's try to move these boxes around. Okay, how can you move these boxes around? Let's do a live preview of this so we know as we are doing it. All right, so let's float the blue boxes one after the other. So for that you have to just add a property called float, and if you say left, you see all the boxes has gone to the left. So if you do the full preview, you see all the boxes has moved to the left. They are floating onto the left side. Okay, they are floating one after the other and on the left side. And if you say green, you say float right, so they float on the right side, right? They are on the left side, they are on the right side, and they are all floating in line, which means they are on the same line. Okay, that's how there's a property called float. Let's understand what is this property called float. Okay, I'll give you a simple definition of it. So float is a property which is used to specify the elements to float left, means you can move those boxes to the left or right, or follow whatever arrangements that you have. So if you say none, they won't follow any floating, they follow the normal standard arrangements of the boxes. You can say left, right, initial and inherit. We have seen left and right, which allows the element to float left or right. Initial value, you can add a custom value which can give to float the element. Inherit means whatever is the parent floating process, like whatever the elements are arranged, it just follow the parent's style. Okay, clear both means it will stop following the boxes. Okay, it just go to the new line and then start from there. All right, so now you have understood how to float the boxes one after the other. Okay, you have learned how to float the boxes one after others. Let's do some more examples of it. Let's put an image and then we try to float it, right, to the left, to the right, to the center, and then we can play around with the image. All right, so for this I'm going to copy paste an image. Let's create one more file. Let's do floating of images. Okay, so we'll remove all these things. We'll remove the boxes. Now let's add some property. The h1 property, we will say text align center, and text decoration we will add underline. Doing some simple styling on the page. Let's do the CSS for image tag. I want to have a margin of right, okay, and I want to have 20px. So I'm adding a margin to an image. Okay, you have seen how to add margin to the boxes. You can add margin to any element, and you can see every element has a box. Okay, so you can move the box around, you can add margin, padding, everything to the boxes. Okay, so image also is a box, so you can add some margin to the right. So when you write text, you have some space with on the right hand side of the image. Then we will have two properties to float left and float right. Okay, we're just gonna say float left and float right. So let's do our image now. Let's add our image. So we have h1, okay, that's our h1, which is in center, because we have said h1 to align center. We want to add an underline as well. Okay, then we want to have a div tag, and inside div tag we want to have like image tag and a paragraph tag. Okay, src is equal to the doc file, that's the image file, and I want to have a class of float left. Okay, and you can have an alt, you can say German Shepherd. We want to have an height 250px and width of 250px. That's the image size. Okay, then we'll add some text here. So we're going to add some text here, right? So let's look at the image here. So you have an image and you see the space here. That space is coming up from the margin. Okay, you have a margin, right? Okay, and as and when you increase this, let's say you make it to 100, you see the space has been increased. Okay, that's how you add margin to the boxes. Okay, and when you add margin, the text will have some space around the image. If you don't have a margin, then text will flow right after the image, which we don't want it. We want to have some space so readability is easy to understand. Okay, so let's create some more tags. Well, I've copy pasted the same code and I've said float right, and I've added the image to float left, then again one after the other. I want to float them one after the other, so you'll have 3 images. All right, so you look like this. Okay, it doesn't really look like what we want to achieve. We want to have a break somewhere. We need to find a way to break the floating, or else you see how jumbled it is. Okay, we need to find how to break this floating. So let's figure out how to do that. Okay, so I'll show you a CSS rule which I use typically for all my projects, and which is also be commonly used in the community as well, and it is called as clear fix. Clear fix means you see this issue that you have, it's all around the place. You should able to find a way to break those blocks, right? Break those boxes and then start in a new line. For that, this is a very famous CSS that you can find in GitHub as well. It's called as clear fix. Okay, it's a pseudo element. Okay, clear fix of after. So wherever you mention clear fix, what it does, it try to break the sequence of the floating. Okay, so this is how our output looks like. After you apply this, you'll see what will happen. So we're gonna apply class is equal to clear fix. Okay, so you see there's a image has been brought it down because this floating of the boxes, it break from that box. Okay, then similarly you can have the clear fixes for rest of the div tags. What you're saying is after this div has been applied, you want to break that box. You don't want to continuously flow in that same hierarchy. You want to start creating a new line item, like a new line, and then start floating the boxes from there. So if you look at now, you see all the boxes is being broken down into each lines. Earlier everything was jumbled up. Okay, after this div tag I have added a clear fix. After this div tag I have added a clear fix. Then now the floating will start with a new line. Okay, so the code here, we haven't covered display yet. Well, visibility hidden is simple to understand. Whatever that is being overflown, it will be hidden. Display block we haven't seen. We will see what is display block. So take this as an example, right? Wherever you have to have a breakage of boxes, use this clear fix. Okay, and this is a code snippet which is very famous hack that many developers use to clear any floating objects after the box. Okay, previously they used to use like this, like content clear both and display table. Then it used to, break that box floating and start with a new line. Then they, as and when people find out an easier way to do it. Okay, we're gonna discuss about what is display block means, then I can explain you what this code does. But as of now, take it as a granted for CSS rule, a CSS that can be used to break the floating of the objects after the boxes. So let's move on. So we are able to print images, some text, images on the right hand side and left hand side, and we are able to float all the images side by side. Okay, so let's create an horizontal and a vertical menu. Let's do that. So let's create another example. We'll create a horizontal menu. All right, so in this example we'll create a menu. So let's create that menu first. We'll use the unordered list, and then we'll have li to it. We'll say home, then you can have a blog, contact, about. Okay, and if you look at the menu, it's going to look like this, right? So this is going to have a horizontal and a vertical menu. Okay, and then we'll try to remove all these listings by CSS. So let's remove all those listings first. So what we can say is list style type as none. Okay, once you do that, then all the dots are gone. That's the listing has been gone. Okay, and then what you can do is we can add a background to this. So you have a black color background, something like that. So background color, right? So you have a background to it, and we can change the color as well to white. So to change the color, this is a link, right? So we have to change the anchor tag. Now we can say lia. So inside, only applicable to anchor tag inside the li tags, and color is white. Okay, so it looks nice now. And then what we're gonna do is we're gonna float them to the left side. So how you can do it? You can li so we float them to the left. Okay, but we are unable to see it. So what we're going to do is we're going to say overflow hidden. Okay, so it brings back the view. So whatever is overflow, we just cut it off and then bring back to the view. So by adding overflow hidden, we're able to see the menu here. We'll add some space as well. Okay, and this space can be done with the anchor tag. We can add some padding. So padding is inside the box. We have some space. So padding of 14px and 16px. Okay, let's add some padding here. Okay, so you see the padding has been added, and then we're gonna say text decoration. You have seen underline, right? We remove the underline now. So text decoration is none, so the line is gone. Okay, now you have a nice menu here. So because we still have padding, we cannot see that padding. What we can do is we can add some inline block to it. We can create a block here. So we have a block here because we added padding. We have a block here, but we cannot see it. So there's a property using, say, display block. We're going to use that. And so display is a property which controls the behavior of displaying the element on the page. If you say display none, let's say display none, you add it to UL, you say display none, then that element is not visible, right? You can control the display of that element via this display property. Okay, so you can remove this, not required. Okay, you can have display block or display inline. Display block will show the block and inline will show the block inline. Okay, so let's add one more property called display. It's called as inline block. Okay, it's already inline, but once you add inline block, then the block is completely visible here. Okay, you're displaying the whole block, right? And the block is completely visible, so you can see the padding as well, right? If you increase the padding, this will go up, but you don't want to have too much of padding, then the menu bar will become very big. Okay, so this is very simple to add horizontal menu. Let's convert into a vertical menu and then play around with it. So I'm going to copy paste this. I'm going to call it vertical menu. Okay, let's open that up. So I'm going to delete this. I'm going to remove all these things. Okay, all right. So what we can do is we can remove overflow hidden. Instead of that, we can provide width. So once you have the width, then it cannot overflow, right? Now let's play around with the anchor tag. We'll say I want to display it as a block, not inline block, like each cube boxes. Then color is white. Okay, so you can see white in color. Then we can add in the padding here. Same 8px or 16px. Then text decoration is none, the underline will be gone. Okay, so you have the sidebar menu. Okay, you can have the sidebar menu, which is nothing but the vertical menu. You can also have the horizontal menu. So you see, it's so easy to create menus with CSS, and the main magic is happening from display. You can display it as a block, you can display it inline. Okay, and then you can add the padding, width and everything, just the normal way that we have learned about handling, how to handle the boxes. All right, so that's all the examples on creating the floating boxes, how to float the boxes, right? And how to float the images and the text around the box, and then how to create horizontal menu and the vertical menu. Okay, so that's all this example, and I'll see you in the next one. Hello and welcome to the lecture on positioning the boxes. Now that you have learned how to create the box, how to move around the boxes, how to place them in line, the third thing that you have to learn is how to position the boxes. Okay, so let's create one example and understand what is positions means. Position means how do you define your boxes onto the page. You have the full control of where you want to place it, and once you place it, do you want to move it or you don't want to move it, or you want to make it fixed, and how is the alignment like? Is it the alignment with the parent or without the parent? So that's what we're going to learn in positioning the boxes. So let's do the first example. So we say position fixed. Okay, so let's open this up. That's the boilerplate code. So that's the position example. All right, so let's try to create the positioning first. So for this, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create an announcement. Okay, what I want to do is logically what I want to do is I want to have an announcement. An announcement on the top, right? Like saying get this 10% off, right? And then I also want to have an announcement on the bottom. Okay, I want to have these two announcements on top and the bottom. Bottom is I want to have a fixed element at end of the page, means it is fixed. Even when you move through the page, these announcements are visible. Okay, and then I want to show some lorem ipsum so that I can move around the page up and down. All right, so I'll copy and paste the code here. That's the plain HTML. Okay, and what we're learning is how to positioning this announcement on top and bottom, fixing those position on top and bottom. If you see here now, right, you have your text, and I want to have this two announcements, one on top and one on bottom. Okay, so let's do the CSS and understand how it can be done. Okay, the first thing is we will have body and HTML and say we want the width to be 100, height to be 100%. Okay, so that's the fixed height, right? Then for each paragraph we want to have a margin of 0 auto, so it comes to the center, and maximum width that you can have for paragraph is 600 px. Okay, so it can go floating all around the width. And margin on top, I want to have a 40 px, so there's a margin on top. I'm adding some margin there, and I also wanna add the line height so that it's readable is easier, right? You have a line height, right? So next I will change the font, so I can apply that to body. I can say font family is Georgia Sheriff. Okay, and H1, this one I want to make it center. Okay, so I will say text align center. Okay, so this align center. Okay, this is just the normal formatting I'm doing. Now I want to get this on top and this one on the fixed somewhere on here in the bottom. Okay, so let's define this top and bottom. Then we'll have bottom as well. Okay, for the top, get this 10% off. That's nothing but your utility bar on the top. So what I want to do is I want to have a background color for it, and I want to say red in color. So you have red in color, and color I want to have it white, so it's visible onto the red, right? Then I want to have an padding of 20 px, so it looks a little bigger, right? And text align, I want to make it center. Okay, so text is aligned center, and I want to add a opacity so that it's little transparent, right? Little transparent. When you have the text floating around, I'll show you, it will be transparent. Then position, right? This is the element that we want to learn, right? Position, you can define where you want it. So position, I want one of the properties fixed, means it will always be on top. You see it's floating on top and the opacity is already available. Okay, we'll move the bottom down, so this will cover the whole area. Okay, so we'll say the position is fixed because starting from here the position is fixed. Now you can change the position by saying left. Okay, you can say left is 0px, bottom is 0px. You don't have to add px, just say bottom left, and then you can say right is 0. Right, so it went down. Okay, so from bottom we say top, right, so it will go to top. Okay, so top we have added 0, left is 0 and right is 0, so it went up. All we can do is we can copy paste this. Okay, and the only thing to bring that thing down, right, to bring that announcement down, instead of top you can say bottom. Okay, so it will go down bottom, right? So simple to play around. The magic is coming from the positioning. When the position is fixed, you can decide from, you know, let's move this down. You can decide like from top you want 10, right? It's coming down. You see it's coming down. If I say, and you can see this, so we can type and see how it is behaving. 30, 60, 90. Okay, it's coming down. So when you say position as fixed, you are putting the box somewhere onto the page and you're deciding how you want to position this, right? You want to position from 50. So you see it is from top you have some like 90 px space, then 50 px you are adding some space, and you're starting it the position of this box from here. When you remove those things, it sits on the top. When you add the bottom 0, means bottom there's no space, then start floating from the bottom. Okay, so that's how you play around with position fixed. And if you scroll, you see the position is not moving, and you have the opacity, nice opacity, so that you can read the text behind it. Okay, you can see the position is not moving because your position is fixed, right? So here you have to say margin, then this will be in center, right in center. Okay, so you have added a nice announcement on top and also on the bottom. Okay, with a simple CSS, right? Let's look at one more example of positioning absolute. Okay, so let's open this file. For this we will delete all the conditions here, and then we'll try to understand what is position absolute means. Okay, so I'm going to create a container, then I'm create a box. Okay, this is like a parent and child relationship, how the box will relate itself with the parent. Okay, for anything that you write, the parent is HTML starting point. You create a container, I will make container as a parent. So I'm gonna see what I'm gonna do here. So you can add the background. This time we'll see in RGBA. You can say 0, 0, 4 just to play around with it. Height is 250 px. I'm just trying to have a box. Width is 250 px. I'm adding a margin left 300 px, just some margin from the top as well, 150 px. So this create a box. I'll create one more box and I'll say height is 150 px, a smaller box. Width is 150 px, and this background color I will put some hexa code decimal for it. Okay, then from top I'm adding 50 px, from left I'm adding 50 px, Then positioning, right? This time I'm saying absolute. Okay, that's the key. That's what we are learning of position. And then we'll create a container. Okay, and we'll say this is container, and then we will have a div class is equal to box, and we'll call it as a box. Okay, so what is the purpose of positioning being absolute? So look at the example. So if you look at the example, there are two boxes. So let's do container is a color white. Okay, so you have your container, you have your box. Understand this concept, very important, because this will help you to draw boxes better, draw the elements on the page better. So you have drawn two boxes. So let's understand how this thing works. So you have a container, and inside that you have a box. But if you look at the output, they are actually two different boxes, have no relation between it. But if you look at the HTML code, they are actually parent and child. Okay, what you have done is you have removed the child, and then you have made it absolute. Means you have removed the relationship between child and the parent, and then this child basically following the absolute of the HTML page. Means it is starting 50-50 from here, from the top, from 0, 50 here, 50 here, right? If I remove position as absolute, if I delete this, right, the box go back to its parent. Okay, and the box basically following the container, because that's how the relationship and you have written in the HTML. The box is a child of a parent, right? But you want to break this relationship. You want to say box is not a parent for a container. You want to move this box outside, and you want this HTML page to be its parent. So what you will do is you will put an absolute here. So for this box, the HTML starting point becomes the parent. Okay, you have broken the relationship between this. And once you say absolute, means the parent is nothing but the HTML. So go back to the great grandparent, that is the HTML margins. Start from 0, 0 here, and then add top 50 and left 50 here. Okay, if you remove this, always your parent child will be attached together. Okay, so what you're doing is you're breaking the relationship. That's nothing but position of absolute. And if you have to have a relative, means you want to put this box inside and then play around inside this box, there's one more property called as relative. So let's look into that. Okay, so what we can do is we can copy paste this code. We can say position relative, and we can open that file. Okay, and you can view it here, close it, have a new preview out of it. Okay, and all you have to do is you have to say relative, right? If you don't say relative, then the floating will not happen. There's no floating. You cannot control the box, but you want to control the box, you say relative. Once you say relative, this becomes the immediate parent is the container. That's how you have defined it here, right? So that's how it start moving itself, right? The box is moving top 50 and left 50. The position it is trying to take from the container. Okay, if you say absolute, the position is taken up from the HTML, right? That's the starting of the tag. But you don't want to do that. You want to say, okay, I want to follow the relative, means I want to follow my parent. So the parent for this box is container. So based on this relativity of this container, it's trying to move from the container. So making container as a parent, it is saying, okay, I want top 50 from my parent and left 50 from my parent, and it is relative to this position. Okay, absolute means it has no relationship with the parent. It breaks out of that whole box and start floating up from the starting. Fixed means you can completely take out of the whole flow of the boxes and you can place anywhere onto the page. Okay, so these are the three properties. One is position fixed, position absolute, and position relative. Okay, so that's all the example on the three positioning of the boxes, and I'll see you in the next one. Hello and welcome to the lecture on display inline or block. So we have seen how to create the box, how to float them, and how to position them. Let's understand how to display those boxes in line or in a block. Okay, so I'm going to create one more example folder here, call it display. Okay, let's create a file here. Okay, let's open this up and we'll put our boilerplate code there. Say display. Okay, this will create a very simple example to understand the concept better. Okay, what we'll do, we'll work around with span tags, right, and div tags. Okay, let's understand. Hello, this is first span, second and third span. Similarly, you can have the div tags. So let's look at the output and I'll explain you what is display inline means. Okay, if you look at the output, the span tags never have a new line. That's the difference between div and a span, and div always create a new line for your HTML tags. Okay, why don't we change this behavior? We will change div not to have the new line and span to have a new line. Okay, that's the property we're going to change. And you know, every tag has a box, right? You can control that box. Now the box behavior for span is don't add a new line, and a box behavior for div is to have a new line. Let's change that behavior. Okay, it's a very simple one line code that you have to write. If you say span as display block, it's add the new line. If you add the div as display inline, you will remove that block, right? With just one line of code, you're actually trying to change the behavior of the HTML tags. You understand that everything is a box. Okay, every element on the HTML page is a block. By changing the block as block, display as block, then you automatically adds a new line. When you want to add all the boxes one after the other, you use display as inline. All right, so that's a very simple example to understand how to use display block and display inline. Let's create a simple menu to understand display and inline blocks. We'll say display inline block. We open this up, delete all the CSS here. Let's create a simple menu. Okay, so let's add some styling to it now. The body color I'm doing as white, and to li I'll say display block. So when you say display block, it adds a new line. So let's add a background color of blue. Okay, so now that you have your items, your list items, and then it's all in a block, right? If you make it inline, okay, they become inline. Okay, that's how you basically control the blocks. Remember this concept very well. The display will display inline and block. If you want to have a block, right, these are blocks, and if you want to have inline, like in a one line, okay, it comes like this. Okay, there's one challenge here. If you want to add a width and a height, let's say I want to have a width and I want to add an height, it's actually not applicable to this. It's not trying to apply the height and the width to the menu. right, to the boxes. For this you have to mention something called as inline block. Okay, when you use display inline block, then you can apply height and the width. It has both the properties of a block and an inline. So understand when to use inline block. When you want to have a width and a height controlled, you can use inline block. This is inline and it also work as a block, right? You can specify the width and the height for the blocks, not for the inline ones. And you can have inline and a block. Inline will put all the elements in one line. Block will add new lines to it. So this is one of the classic example of how to add, when you work with menus, how to add the menus line by line or vertical. Okay, so that's about display inline, display block and display inline block, and I'll see you in the next one. Hello and welcome to the lecture. Let's look at how to import a Google font. Okay, so let's create that folder. Okay, let's create a file here, googlefonts.html. Let's open this up in the brackets. All right, so let's add the boilerplate. This is a Google font. All right, so we will see how to import Google font and how to add them onto your page. So let's go to fonts.google.com and then we will search for the font, and the font that I'm looking at is Open Sans. You can add the plus button here, right? And once it is added, they'll give you some HTML code to use. So there's a link tag. We'll copy this link tag. We will place the link tag in the head tag, right? We have placed it here. This is to link the font, and then to the body I want to apply this font. Okay, how you can apply? You can say font family Open Sans sans serif. So they already gave you the code here, how to apply the CSS rule. So now whatever you write will be having this Google font attached to it. So let's write some HTML code here, heading, paragraph and all those things, and let's view this. And this font will be Open Sans, right? If you want to see the font name, this is Open Sans. Okay, if you remove this, it goes back to the standard text. If you remove this, it goes back to the Open Sans, that is nothing but the Google font. Okay, similarly, if you find any other fonts, let's go back to our Google fonts, minimize this, and you want to have a curvy, like like a book style font. Let's say you want to have a different font. You can go to font. Let's say you select slant, and you want this homemade apple. Just click on the plus sign, and you can have this. Both Open Sans and homemade apple will be available with the there's an or symbol here. You can import both the fonts here. Once you do this, you just have to say open homemade apple to the body, right? And then you go open your page, and then you will have that font. It is so simple to import Google fonts, and this is how you do it. All right, so that's example of how to import a Google font, and I'll see you in the next one. Hello and welcome to the lecture on layout with CSS. So now that you know how to create a box, how to float the elements, how to position the elements, and how to display them inline or block, it's the right time to learn how to do a layout. Means how to have a header and a footer, sidebars, and then the content area. Okay, we're going to create that layout now. Okay, and I'm going to show you images to show how we are trying to achieve these layouts. Okay, so let's do this example. All right, so I'm going to copy paste a couple of files here. So first we're going to do the layout. Okay, what is a layout, right? If you look at this layout, you have an header layout, header box, then you have a content box, then you have a footer box. Okay, so you have three different type of boxes available. That's basically the layout. You have an header layout, content layout, and a footer layout. So this is one of the layout without the sidebars. That is the first layout we'll create. we'll create a header, we'll create the content, we'll create the footer, and we'll not have sidebar. So eventually we'll try adding the left sidebar and the right sidebar. Okay, so we'll start with this file. We'll see what's inside that file. Okay, we'll open this file first. Right, it's just the text, nothing inside in it. And then we will try to, this is the header layout, this is the content layout, and this is your footer layout. So we'll try to add some CSS to this, and then we will try to have a nice layout for this. All right, so let's create, we'll duplicate this. So layout with header and footer. Right, let's open this file. What we can do is we can even preview the file and see how it's behaving in the output. Okay, this is the output. Let's open up the file. All right, so let's add the CSS. All right, so let's start doing it. You can even say style. Okay, and then you can start adding the styles here. Okay, we'll change this tags. Okay, we'll not add a class, but we'll change these tags. Okay, it's simple to understand. You have an header, you have an articles, 2 articles in this section, and then you have a footer. There's nothing fancy here. You have an header, you have section and articles, and then you have a footer. Okay, so we'll work on the tags now. So we'll have a body, and this is the width of your page, so 940 px. So you can go up to 940 px. So when you float, the text will float all around to 940 px. And when you want to bring things in the center, when you see like this, right, you can see align center, always you can see align sector. But what is a good way to do it, you can have the margin of 0 and auto, so they all float to the center. Okay, they all float center. Okay, and then you can have a font, and there's a way you can mention points or EM. You can mention your size of your font in EMs as well. And then you can name your font. There's a backup. If that font is not available, you can go back to another font, close it here, put a comma, and then the sans serif. Okay, so now your body is ready with the text. Let's edit the header, section, article, aside, footer. Okay, we'll say display as block. So we want to have a new line for everything. Then header and footer, we also want to have a padding. We want to remove the padding, and we want to text align center, right? And if you refresh it, okay, you can see it's aligned center. You have this nice margin 0 auto, basically brings everything to center. And then what you're trying to do is you're trying to make the text to the center, and then you have a nice layout where you have the header, you have sections, articles, and then you have footer. Okay, let's enhance this, and let's enhance this by adding the sidebars. Okay, so what we want to achieve here is we're going to create one more layout. We have done with header, content, and footer. Let's add this left sidebar, and this left sidebar you will have an image and some caption to it. Then you have some links which is floated to the left, and then you have this border which is dashed border, okay, dotted border. All right, so we'll add this flow left sidebar, and then we'll try to float them onto the left. Okay, and then the content to the right. I'm going to create this. So for this we have to have another file. So let's copy paste this file with left bar. Okay, let's open this up. Okay, here we have footer, we have header, we have section. What we can do is we can have a sidebar here, and I'm going to copy paste the sidebar here. So that is basically the sidebar. Obviously you have to move this to the left, right? The only thing that I'm doing it here is I'm adding an image, then fig caption, then I'm adding some links here, okay, with the UL tag. Now let's look at how you have to put it to the left side. Okay, before that we're going to look at the output. there's no image here. Let's copy paste our image. All right, so image will be appearing here. Close this, open a new one. Okay, so your layout doesn't looks good because it's all floating onto the block, so it's just floating one after the other. What you want to do is you want to float this left so that this block comes sit side by side. Okay, so let's do that. So what you can do is you can go to a side and you can say float left. So once you say float left, you're almost the page has been done, because you have a left bar, you have your content, you have your header and footer. You can add a line here by adding the border, right? And then this basically looks like the format that we want to create as well, right? You have your left bar, you have header, content and the footer. All right, so let's do some touch-ups here. You have section and we'll say float right, just in case if they are not floating onto the right, you can make sure they are floating onto the right, the sections. And they have a width, they have their own width of 700px. Okay, and you want to really have a padding to the left so that the image and the text doesn't go attached to themselves, means the left sidebar and the content doesn't attach themselves, so you're adding some space there. Okay, and then you want to put the border now, right? If you look at the output, okay, I'm trying to add some border here. 2px solid, you can say dotted, right? Hash B2A497. Okay, you see the dotted line here. Then you can add to footer, you can clear from both. This is important. Clear both will clear all the floatings that is happening. To float one after the other, you have to break that floating. And you want to say footer, I want to in a new line, so you'll say clear both. And you will have the width for the footer 940px and height is 100px, and you can add some padding to the footer to look it nicer, right? And once you do that, you basically get a nice formatting as we want to have it, right? Let's look at this, what we want to have. Yeah, it's exactly the same the way we want it, right? We want to have the dotted line, and then we want to have some padding onto the footer, and then this is floating onto the right, this is floating onto the left. Then you have some space over here that you have added via the padding, and then it looks nice with the layout of left sidebar, content, the header and the footer. So let's create a navigation. So what we want to do is we want to add a navigation bar right after the header. Okay, so let's create that navigation. All right, so we'll add the navigation now. So we'll show you how the navigation looks like. Okay, so I've copied this layout. Let's open that up. So you have your header, content, footer and left sidebar. So this is a navigation we'll create: home, about and contact. This is a navigation right after the header. Okay, so we'll open up our navigation file. So right after the header, you want to add the navigation. So let's look at it. Right after the header, you want to have the navigation. So we'll add the navigation here. Okay, you see it's here. We just float inline. We'll remove the dots and it should be good to go. All right, so let's do some settings onto the navigation. So we are in the header and the footer, so we'll add it here. So for the navigation, we will text align to center, so they go to the center, right? And onto the li, first we add to the ul. We'll remove the list style. Done. So list is gone. Okay, and we'll remove the padding as well. We'll also remove the margins from bottom, so it really looks like the content is starting right after the menu. Okay, now we'll to the list items. we have to display inline block. Remember, we have discussed about that. Okay, so once you have the inline block, they are aligned in line by line. Now you can control the margin and all those things, right? 0 0 0, and then you want to have 50 px onto the left, and they have the spacing there. And then you can add the width as well. Okay, so they have the 100 px width, so it looks nice. Now you have a navigation bar where you can have the links, and the navigation bar is right after the header. Okay, so let's continue. Let's add the right sidebar, and then we'll close this page. So this is the layout we are doing. There's the fourth layout. So we are added the header, navigation, content and footer, and the left sidebar. Let's add this right sidebar. Okay, so let's do that. Let's create that page. Let's open that page. So we'll have the same aside, and this time we'll have this right after the content, so we can float them onto the right. Okay, so let's look at the example for this, how it looks like. Okay, they are floating right after it, so it just float it right after this content. So what we can do, we can create left and right, and then we can attach it this to left and this is to right, and I think that should be enough. So we have aside which is floating left. Now we can say aside dot a left. Okay, and then we can float it left. We can say aside dot float left, and we can say float it right. All we have to do is we have to take this class and aside, add it to the aside. Okay, it float left. Then you take this, go to your another right sidebar, and you just have to say right. So you still see that it is floating onto the bottom. It's still on the right side, but it's still floating it down. So what we can do, we can look at this section, this content area. Right, what we can do is the section is right side aligned, we can make it left, right? So now we can reduce the size so that this can fit in, right? So if you say 500, yeah, so it fits in here now. All right, so this fit in now. So just add the line, dotted line here, and then you're almost done with the page. Okay, so we're just playing around by left and right, floating them left and right, and that's all we are trying to do it here. Okay, let's add the dotted lines to the section now. Okay, we can say border right, same thing, and then we have a line here. They are very simple to follow and very easy to create layout. So you see, with simple CSS, right, you can actually create a beautiful HTML page layout. Okay, and we haven't done really anything here. We have just worked on the layouts. Okay, we have aligned the things onto the left and then pushed the content to the left and this one to the right, and then we have added some dotted lines, and rest of the things we have just added the width, and then we pushed everything to the center. Then here we have display inline block, and then we have added some padding and spacing into the list items, right? So if you look at this page from CSS point of view, you should understand how many boxes are there, and then how you are moving those boxes onto the page. Okay, so by now you should be able to understand how the CSS works, right? How to create the box, how to add margins, how to add paddings, how to move around the box to the left and right, how to make them display inline and block inline. And what we are trying to do here is we are just playing around the box. If you have to remember one thing about CSS, there is a magical box inside every element, and you can show it via these boxes. Okay, you are playing around these boxes. The CSS is nothing but playing around with these boxes. You have boxes for every tag, for every element onto the HTML page. There is a magical box. All you're trying to do is you're trying to visualize how should I move my boxes. Shall I add the margin top, margin bottom, padding left, padding top, putting them onto the floating onto the left, floating onto the right? Where is my position fixed, absolute or relative? This is what you're doing in CSS. If you're really thinking about CSS, you have to think in boxes, because all the layout is defined in boxes. You can see there are all the elements are boxes. So when you work around doing a layout, think of as a box. You could draw on a paper on the boxes and see which box you want where. Then you try to define those elements, HTML elements, and then create that boxes around that elements, right? Then you try to place them wherever you want to place them onto the HTML page. Okay, so that's all about how to work out with layouts with CSS. Do this exercise so that you get to understand many of things, like how to work with display inline and how to float the item boxes to left and right, and how to play around with the boxes with margins and paddings. Okay, so that's all in this lecture, and I'll see you in the next one. Hello and welcome to the lecture on things to remember for intermediate to CSS. Let's do a quick recap of what we have seen in this section. We have seen that every tag that you write in HTML has a magical box which you can control in CSS. If you want to remember something in CSS, always remember that every element that you write on a web page has this magical box. So when you're designing a web page, always think in boxes. Think you have box, and how do you arrange all those boxes onto the HTML page? That's one of the key things that you have to remember when you design with CSS. For every box, you can have, you can add borders, you can add margins, you can add paddings. Margins is between two boxes, padding is inside the box. Then you can change the size of the box. And also when you add margins, right, you add margins which add spaces between the two boxes. Padding, we have seen how to add space inside the box. You can also float the box left, right, and also you can decide not to float it. There are three types of positioning of the box that we have seen. We have seen fixed, which never change. You can choose any position on the web page. Then we have seen absolute. Absolute basically go back to the HTML and start from there. And then relative is relative to this immediate parent. Then we have seen how to display boxes, like how to display them inline one after the other, how to display a block, and how to have inline block which had the width and the height. Okay, this is the three properties. Display inline will arrange all the elements side by side. Block will arrange all the elements one after the other. And display inline can be used to change the height and the width of the box, which still remains inline. Alright, so these are the things we have seen in this section. Make sure you understand all the things of how to move your boxes in CSS. Alright, so that's all about in this lecture. I'll see you in the next one. Hello and welcome to the section summary. Let's see what you should be able to do by now. Well, you should be able to understand how to work with CSS boxes and what is the concept around it and how to create a box. Then you should know how to move the boxes around the pages, and you should understand what is CSS float or CSS clear. You should know how to do the positioning of elements with the CSS. You should know what is display inline or block. Then you should know how to import Google Fonts and how to create the favicon for your site with CSS. And I believe you have also worked through the exercises and examples that we have provided, and you should know how to create a website layout. So by now we have covered HTML and CSS together. So you should be ready to start building a website. In this section, we have shown you how to create a layout. That is your foundation for creating a website. Alright, this is lecture we have covered in this section, and I hope you are very clear about all these concepts. Alright, so that's all for this lecture in intermediate to CSS, and I'll see you in the next one.